Ma kezdődik a világ vezetőinek történelmi pere. Ma kezdődik a világ vezetőinek történelmi pere.
A különleges ügyész bizonyítékokat terjeszt a bíróság bírái elé, amelyekben vádat emel Robert Prevost, Leo, pápa, Charles Windsor, Charles, király, Egyesült Államok ellen.
Donald Trump elnök, Mark Rutte NATO főtitkár és 9 másik ember elleni bűncselekményekért. A bíróság hivatalos frissítése. Kiadva 2025. szeptember 1-én, hétfőn 19 óra GMT-kor. Nem titkolt nyugat-európai helyről tudósít. Néhányan a rituálisan meggyilkolt 9. kör áldozatai közül, fent.
És néhány gyilkosuk, Robert Prevost, a jövő, Leo, pápa, Jeffrey Epstein és Donald Trump, lent. Mark Rutte, NATO főtitkár, és King, Charles Windsor, lent.
Néhány ilyen gyermek meggyilkolásának helyszíne emberi vadászpartikon, Brüsszeltől délre. Sok hónapos nyomozás után a Nemzetközi Közjogi Bíróság büntetőeljárást indított a legfelsőbb egyházi, kormányzati és vállalati tisztviselők ellen. A vád, részvétel szörnyű emberiség elleni bűncselekményekben, beleértve a rituális nemi erőszakot, kínzást és gyermekek meggyilkolását. Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedikt, 2013. Februári történelmi vádemelését és hivatalából való kizárását követően a bíróság a nemzetközi jog értelmében felhatalmazást kapott arra, hogy vádat emeljen. Elítélje és megbüntesse a legutóbbi ügyben megnevezett 13 vádlottat. A bíróság 5 elnöklő bírója európai és amerikai igazságügyi szakértő. A nürnbergi jogi precedensek szerint működő különleges bíróságot alkotnak, amely lehetővé teszi bármely személy büntetőeljárás lefolytatását, beleértve az egyház és államfőket is. Ami különösen erős az ügyünkben, az az, hogy ezeket a vádlottakat rövidesen bűnösnek találhatják anélkül, hogy valaha is bíróság elé állnának. Mert kapcsolatban állnak a római katolikus egyház és annak 9. kör gyermekáldozati kultusza nevű, már elítélt transznacionális bűnszervezettel, mondta a bíróság különleges ügyésze ma. Tehát, akárcsak az egyes auschwitzi SS tisztek, akik parancsnoki felelősséget viseltek ezekért az atrocitásokért, a 13 vádlottat is bűnösnek tekintik mindaddig, amíg be nem bizonyítják ártatlanságukat, mert egy gyilkos, bűnszövetkezetet vezetnek és részt vesznek abban. Ezért a vádlottak feladata, hogy megcáfolják az ellenük felhozott vádakat, különben a törvény teljes súlyával kell szembenézniük. E tekintetben és a nemzetközi jog előírásainak megfelelően a bíróság aktívan felkészíti a bíróság által helyettesített rendőri és félkatonai erőket a 13 vádlott elleni ítélet végrehajtására. Ez a végrehajtás magában foglalja a bűnösök bebörtönzését, a 9. kör szertartásainak bezárását, a bűnösök vagyonának kisajátítását, valamint bűnügyi intézményeik felszámolását. Eltökélt szándékunk, hogy bezárjuk ezt a gyermekgyilkos kultuszt és az azt támogató bírákat, papokat, rendőröket, politikusokat és bankárokat, mondta az ügyész. Ez a munka a próba eredményétől függetlenül folytatódik. A per-robbanás veszélyes aspektusa, hogy az egyik elsődleges vádlott a NATO főtitkára, Mark Rutte, akit a 9. körben fentesei és túlélői éppen a hollandiai Zwolle-ban 2012-ben és 2014-ben végzett rituálék résztvevőjeként azonosítottak. Miközben a világ a NATO és Oroszország közötti esetleges háborúra készül, a Mark Rutte, Donald Trump és más magasrangú nyugati politikusok elleni bizonyítékok geopolitikai porhordónak minősülnek. Miután a bíróság bírái ma megkapták az ügyészi jelentést, és megerősítették a vádlottak névsorát és az ellenük felhozott vádakat, megjelenési idézést adnak ki a vádlottaknak. A bíróság előtti megjelenés megtagadása vagy elmulasztása azt jelzi, hogy a vádlottak nem vitatják és nem támadják meg az ellenük felhozott vádakat, és azonnali bűnös ítélet jogszerűen hozható. Ezt követően bírósági elfogató parancsot lehet kiadni letartóztatásukra, valamint ingatlanaik és vagyonuk lefoglalására. A bíróság a korai szakaszában zárt eljárást fog lefolytatni, de a nyilvánosság és a média rendelkezésére bocsátja a szemtanúk vallomásait és egyéb bizonyítékokat. Igazságügyi megfigyelők és több kormány képviselői vesznek részt a bírósági eljárásokban. A tárgyalás előre haladtával álljon készen a sajtóközleményekre és a bíróság jelentéseire, szintén közzétéve a címen www.murderbydecree.com ITCCS frissítések alatt. A számvevőszék 2025. augusztus 9-i első időközi jelentésének megtekintéséhez lásd http://url. A Nemzetközi Közjogi Bíróság George Dufort titkárán keresztül érhető el a címen itchoffice@protonmail.com. A bíróság 2025. szeptember 1-én, hétfőn adta ki globális sajtóközleményként. A Nemzetek Törvénye alapján 2010. június 15-én létrehozott de jure nyilvántartási bíróság. A vezető tisztségviselőket emberiesség elleni bűncselekményekkel vádolják. A vezető tisztségviselőket emberiesség elleni bűncselekményekkel vádolják. Leo pápát, Donald Trumpot, Mark Rutte NATO vezetőt és 10 másikat nemzetközi bíróság elé idéznek. 2025. szeptember 8 hétfő, GMT. Brüsszel. Az egyházi, kormányzati és vállalati vezetőket ma nyilvánosan megvádolták gyermekkereskedelemben és gyilkosságban való részvétellel, és idézést adtak ki, hogy válaszoljanak a vádakra a bíróságon jövő hétfőn, szeptember 15-én. Az idézés másolata következik. Megrendelés a megjelenésre. Ezt a nyilvános idézést a következő összeesküvőtársaknak adják ki. Az emberiség elleni bűncselekményekben. Robert Prevost, aka, 14. Leo pápa. Mark Rutte, a NATO főtitkára. Charles Windsor, aka, 3. Károly király. Andrew Windsor, aka, Andrew, herceg. Justin Welby, Canterbury érseke. Donald Trump, az Egyesült Államok elnöke. Keith Schiller, Donald Trump korábbi asszisztense. Albert Bourla, a Pfizer Pharmaceuticals vezérigazgatója. Fred Hiltz, Kanada egykori anglikán primása. Pietro Parolin, a római egyház bíborosa. Timothy Dolan, a római egyház bíborosa. Bernard Marx, a római egyház bíborosa. Gary Patterson, a kanadai Egyesült Egyház korábbi moderátora. Ezennel elrendeljük, hogy jelenjen meg e-bíróság előtt 2025. Szeptember 15-én, hétfőn, hogy válaszoljon azokra a büntetőjogi vádakra, amelyekben aktívan részt vett a gyermekek és felnőttek emberkereskedelemében és kultikus rituális nemi erőszakában, kínzásában és meggyilkolásában, és hogy továbbra ezt teszi. Legyen tanácsos figyelembe véve a bizonyított bűnszervezetekkel való jelenlegi kapcsolatát. A bíróság előtti megjelenés vagy az idézésre való válaszadás elmulasztása jogalapként értelmezhető pro confesso bűntudat és kényszeríti az ön és bűntársai elleni letartóztatási és helyreállítási parancsok kiadását. Ezt a végzést a nemzetközi jog alapján adják ki, és teljes ereje és hatása van. Ezt a végzést a bíróság esküdt serifjei hajtják végre. Kiadta 2025. Szeptember 8-án, hétfőn a büntetőeljárási osztály. A Nemzetközi Közös Jog Bíróságának. Aláírva, megerősítve és az eredetiben bélyegezve. Bernard J. Ogilvy, Ph.D., LLM, elnöklő bíró. George Dufort, LLB, a bíróság titkára. 08092025A001 számú bírósági írat. itchoffice@protonmail.com. Jegyzet, ezt a megjelenési parancsot minden vádlottnak kézbesítik. Nyilvános bemutatásának ténye egyben a vádlott jogi idézését is jelenti. Külön közölték velük annak részleteit, hogy mikor és hol kell megjelenniük a bíróság előtt. A háttérért lásd www.murderbydecree.com az ITCCS frissítések alatt. Donald Trump a gyerekoltásokról, ezek mind mérgek. Az összes az, plusz videó.
Az egyik vegyület károsíthatja a veséket, a légzőrendszert, a bőrt, az idegrendszert.
Vajon az USA elnöke miért most és miért pont ebben a formában hívta fel a figyelmet a gyermekoltások veszélyeire? Lehet, hogy hamarosan kiderül. Mi az abszolút szkizofrénia? Amikor az oltásimádó, fideszes Trump-hívőknek Trump azt mondja, minden gyerekoltás méreg. Valószínűleg ezzel a tudathasadással szembesülhetett tegnap az oltásipart gátlástalanul kiszolgáló összes fideszes médiatermék, amikor imádott hősük. Donald Trump, az Amerikai Egyesült Államok elnöke azt a bejegyzést tette a gyerekoltásokra vonatkozóan, hogy ezek mind mérgek. Az összes az. Ehhez Trump egy videót is mellékelt, amelyben orvosok figyelmeztetnek az oltóanyagok veszélyeire, például a bennük lévő tiomerzál vegyületre, amelyet higanytartalma miatt az idegrendszeri fejlődési rendellenességekhez, többek között az autizmushoz kötik. A videóban az egyik orvos felemel egy kis edényt, és világosan elmondja a veszélyt.
Mutasd meg nekik a tiomerzált, amit fémtartályban tartunk, mert félünk tőle, ez egy nagyon finom por, ez a tiomerzál, amit nagyon mérgezőnek tartanak.
Halmozódó hatása van. Majd az orvos felolvassa a vegyületet tartalmazó edényen található figyelmeztetést.
Károsíthatja a veséket, a légzőrendszert, a bőrt, az idegrendszert. Reproduktív és fejlődési toxicitást okozhat, ami azt jelenti, hogy olyan mellékhatásai lehetnek, mint az autizmus és más idegrendszeri fejlődési rendellenességek.
Ez egy felfoghatatlanul mérgező anyag. A videó ezt követően ezeket a veszélyeket az injekciókon keresztül történő valós veszélyekhez köti. És ez az a vegyület, amely a vakcinában van. Az oltóanyag nagyon veszélyes, mert közvetlenül beadják az emberi szervezetbe. A videóban az influenza elleni oltásokra is kitérnek. Talán a legnagyobb higany-expozíciót legalábbis az Egyesült Államokban az influenza elleni vakcina jelenti. Az influenza elleni vakcinát ma már minden várandós nőnek, minden csecsemőnek, minden gyermeknek évente ajánlják. Hozzáteszik, hogy a tiomerzált sokszor nem steril gyártási folyamatok során keverik bele az oltásokba. Minden egyes lépésnél tiomerzált adnak hozzá, mert a gyár nem tiszta és nem steril. Egész idő alatt tiomerzára vagy valami hasonlóra van szükség. Ezt le kell állítani.
A videóban egy oltóorvos is megszólalt, aki megdöbbent a hallottaktól, azt mondta, nem tudta, mit ad be, nem volt tisztában az oltás veszélyeivel. Néhány nappal ezelőtt hívtam fel a figyelmet arra az elhallgatott hírre, amely szerint a kötelező gyermekoltások eltörlését szorgalmazza Matteo Salvini, Olaszország miniszterelnök helyettese.
Mint fogalmazott.
A legtöbb európai országban nincsenek kötelező védőoltások, ezért nem hiszem, hogy a megkérdőjelezésük tudományellenes lenne, sőt szerintem ez az észszerű.
Mindeközben Magyarországon napokon belül kötelező módon a 6. és 7. osztályos gyerekeket kezdik majd vakcinázni. Ráadásul erre úgy kötelezik a kisgyereket, hogy semmilyen tudományos bizonyíték nincs a hatékonyságra. Donald Trump bejegyzésével kapcsolatban érdemes feltenni a kérdést, vajon miért most és miért pont ebben a formában hívta fel a figyelmet a gyermekoltások veszélyeire. Minden bizonnyal ennek az okát rövid időn belül megtudjuk.
Show them the thimerosal bomb, which we keep in a metal container because we're a little afraid of it, and it's a very fine powder.
This is thimerosal, which is labeled very toxic, has cumulative effects, can cause damage to the kidneys, to the respiratory system, skin, to the nervous system. It specifically warns on here that it can cause reproductive and developmental toxicity, meaning that it can cause things like autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. This is immensely toxic stuff.
And it's
And this is what's in the vaccine. It's important to realize we're talking about a whole range of products. Vaccines are a big one because, of course, you're directly injecting it. For example, this is tetanus vaccine. This one expires. It's a little outdated now in 2007. Here's the thimerosal. 1 to 10,000 is a preservative. Perhaps the biggest one in the U.S., at least, that's for exposure to mercury is the influenza vaccine. Influenza vaccine is now recommended for all pregnant women, all infants, all children. On a yearly basis, you're supposed to
have last year's influenza one? Understand that thimerosal is not added at the end. It's not like, well, that factory next year can make thimerosal free. Thimerosal, you either have to have a thimerosal-free factory or you have to not have one. They add thimerosal at each step because the factory is not clean and not sterile. So you either have to have an expensive sterile factory where you don't need thimerosal, or you have to have one that produces thimerosal. It's going to need thimerosal or something the whole time. It needs to be stopped.
This is the influenza vaccine from Adventist Pasteur, their flu zone. Thimerosal, 25 micrograms of mercury per dose.
I'd like to point out that a lot of people didn't know, and I'm one of them. I've given 2,000 Rogam shots. I've been in vaccines for 35 years. I didn't know that Rogam had thimerosal in it. So I think a lot of the doctors were unaware. They were unaware that even the word thimerosal meant mercury.
Rendelet szerinti gyilkosságról. A rendelet általi gyilkosság cenzúrázatlan feljegyzés a bennszülött gyermekek tervezett kiirtásáról Kanada gyilkos, indiai bentlakásos iskoláiban. Korrekciós ellenjelentésként adják ki az egyház és az állam által elkövetett igazságszolgáltatási tévedésről, amelyet Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, néven ismernek. Szemtanúk vallomásai és a TRC által szándékosan elhallgatott vagy figyelmen kívül hagyott archív dokumentumok alapján a gyilkosság rendelettel bizonyítja, hogy az őslakosok népirtása vallás által vezetett kampányként kezdődött, és továbbra is szándékos kormányzati politika Kanadában. Ez az ellenjelentés feltárja ezeket a megdöbbentő tényeket, az indiai bentlakásos iskolás gyerekek több mint fele már az első évben haldokolni kezdett. Amikor ezeket az egyházi létesítményeket megnyitották, ez a hatalmas halálozási arány több mint fél évszázadon át töretlenül folytatódott a csíraháború szándékos gyakorlata miatt. Az előírt havi halálkvóta szerint bizonyítékok ezekre a bűncselekményekre és szándékos természetüket az RCMP és a katolikus folyamatosan megsemmisítette anglikán és egyesült egyház legalább 1960. Óta ugyanez a népirtás ma is folytatódik. Az őslakos nőket és gyermekeket célozza meg, és a bennszülött földekre és erőforrásokra éhes külföldi vállalati érdekek vezérlik. Kanada, ITDC, jogászok és emberi jogi csoportok nemzetközi koalíciója. Az ITDC decemberben alakult meg, 2015-ben kivizsgálják az emberek eltűnését Kanadában, vádat emelnek a felelősök ellen, és megakadályozzák, hogy Kanada újabb messzelést végezzen az emberiség elleni bűncselekményei miatt. Ez a jelentés válasz ezekre a bűncselekményekre, és sürgős felszólítás a világnak és minden kanadainak, hogy ne éljenek többé népirtó rezsim alatt. Kiadja az ITDC brüsszeli és torontói központi irodája. További információért írjon a angelfire101@protonmail.com címre. Kevin Annettről. Kevin Annett neves globális emberi jogi aktivista, író és bejelentő, aki vezette azt a mozgalmat, amely Kanadában és Európában leleplezi és vád alá helyezi az egyház és az állam által elkövetett gyermekgyilkosságokat. Kevin a The International Tribunal of Crimes of Church and State társalapítója. Kétszer jelölték Nobel békedíjra. A neki szóló üzenetek a angelfire101@protonmail.com-ben hagyhatók. A különleges ügyész időközi jelentése. A különleges ügyész időközi jelentése. A nép ügyében kontra Robert Prevost et al. 09012025A001 számú ügyirat. Kiadva 2025. augusztus 8-án, pénteken. A Nemzetközi Közjogi Bíróság előtt ítélték el.
Nem tudom elfogadni azt a kánonodat, hogy pápát és királyt más férfiakkal ellentétben ítéljük meg, azzal a kedvező vélelemmel, hogy nem tesznek rosszat. Ha van feltételezés, az a másik út a hatalom birtokosaival szemben, a hatalom növekedésével növekszik. Nincs annál rosszabb rossz, mint amikor a hivatal megszenteli annak birtokosát. A hatalom korrumpál, az abszolút hatalom pedig abszolút. John Acton, 1887, utalva a Vatikán, pápai tévedhetetlenségi nyilatkozatára. A Vatikán, egy álállam, külföldi joghatóságot hozott létre más államokban, amelyen keresztül titokban foglalkozik a szexuális visszaélőkkel és a soraiban lévő más bűnözőkkel, oly módon, hogy összeegyeztethetetlen és ellentétes azon nemzetek törvényeivel, amelyekben a római egyház működik. Sok országban az egyház párhuzamos jogrendszert működtet a rendőrség, a bíróságok és a kormányok tudta nélkül és szándékosan elrejtve, amelyben a bűnösök büntetlenül maradnak. Az áldozatokat pedig elhallgattatják. Egy idegen hatalom ilyen harcias behatolása más államok szuverenitásába és törvényeibe a nemzetközi jog szerint háborús cselekménynek minősül. Jeffrey Robertson, QC, London, 2010. Egész idő alatt mosolygott, miközben azt a kisfiút folytogatta, mintha tudta volna, hogy megússza. Olyan volt, mintha az ördögöt néztem volna. Ruth, a 9. kör kultuszának szemtanúja túlélője Rómában 2016 tavaszán, Robert Prevost püspökre, a leendő, 14. Leó pápára hivatkozva. Ezt a jelentést a különleges ügyészség terjeszti elő a nyilvánosság és az igazságszolgáltatás ügye érdekében, valamint az elesett gyermekek légióinak emlékére. Akiket továbbra is pusztít a 9. kör, nonus perfidia. Preambulum bekezdés. A különleges ügyészség 2025. Június 2-án, hétfőn kezdte meg az ügy vizsgálatát. Az ügyész feladata a vádemeléshez szükséges bizonyítékok összegyűjtése és az itt megnevezett személyek és szervek, valamint a szintén beidézendő személyek elleni büntetőeljárás megindítása. Ez az eset Robert Prevost bűnösségét érinti, aka, 14. Leó pápa, emberiesség elleni bűncselekmények és bűnszövetség tervezéséért és elkövetéséért, férfiak, nők és gyermekek kereskedelméért, megerőszakolásáért, kínzásáért és meggyilkolásáért, a tiltott kábítószerkereskedelem elősegítéséért, az igazságszolgáltatás akadályozásáért és a 9. kör néven ismert emberáldozati kultuszban való részvételért vagy nonus perfidia. Ez az ügy más magánszemélyeket és testületeket érint, akik ezekért és más bűncselekményekért felelősek, beleértve, de nem kizárólagosan a következőket. Donald John Trump aka, az Egyesült Államok elnöke. Charles Arthur Windsor aka, 3. Károly király. Andrew Albert Windsor aka, András herceg, York hercege. Timothy Michael Dolan aka, Dolan New York, bíboros. Pietro Parolin aka, Parolin bíboros, a római kúria. Bernard Marx aka, München, bíborosa. Albert Bourla aka, a Pfizer Pharmaceutical vezérigazgatója. A néhai Jeffrey Edward Epstein. A néhai Franz Hengsbach és Lorenz Jaeger aka, római katolikus kardinals. A Knights of Columbus, az Opus Dei, a Deutsche Bank, a Bank for International Settlements, valamint a belga, holland és brit királyi családok tisztviselői, akiket Robert Prevost mellett mind beidéznek az udvarba. Ez az időközi jelentés összefoglalja az ügyészség által az elmúlt 60 napban feltárt néhány kiemelkedő bizonyítékot. A jelentés megállapításai 10 szemtanú eskü alatt tett vallomásán és vallomásán alapulnak, köztük a 9. kör, nonus perfidia 5 túlélője, egy vatikáni alkalmazott, egy informátor az olasz kormányban, egy Interpol kutató, a Pfizer Pharmaceutical kutatója, és a 9. kört, nonus perfidiát lehetővé tevő támogató hálózat egykori tagja.
A jelentés megállapításai vatikáni dokumentumokból is származnak, beleértve az 1869. decembere óta megtartott 9. kör, nonus perfidia szertartások dátumait. Helyszíneit és résztvevőit bemutató archivált naplót, az Interpol és az Európai Bíróságok korábban rejtett feljegyzéseiből, a Pfizer Pharmaceuticals kutatási adataiból. Valamint a 9. kör, nonus perfidia szertartások résztvevői által szolgáltatott videó és fényképes bizonyítékokból. Ezen információk jelenlegi kiadása szükséges a tanúk és források biztonságának biztosításához, valamint más adatközlők jelentkezésének ösztönzéséhez. Az eddig megszerzett releváns bizonyítékok összefoglalása. Első, Robert Prevost, más néven Xivleo pápa, még az ágoston-rend újoncaként figyelte meg a tanú, aki részt vett a 9. kör, nonus perfidia, a továbbiakban, kultusz, beiktatási ceremóniáján 1978. Október 17-én egy barlangkamra a Vatikán alatt. A szertartást Karol Wojtyla, második, Pál pápa, Róma újonnan megválasztott püspöke vezette. A tanú azt állítja, hogy látta, ahogy Wojtyla megölt egy terhes tinédzserlányt a szertartáson, és felvágta a méhét, hogy eltávolítsa a babát, amit a The Cult résztvevői köztük a Prevost is megettek. Az utóbbi ezután a tanúra terítette a baba vérét, majd megverte és megerőszakolta. Ugyanebben az időszakban egy róla készült fénykép alapján pozitívan azonosította a Prevostot. Lent Robert Prevost, balra, Karol Wojtyla pedig 1983-ban Prevost felszentelése után. Ismerem ezt a fickót, láttam őt, előzetes, máskor, de először 1978-ban történt a második János Pál pápával, amikor a lányt megölték. Ő, előzetes, részt vett abban, hogy megerőszakoltak, és a baba vérét és testdarabjait a számba és a hüvelyembe kényszerítették. Amikor ezt csinálta, Karol Wojtyla úgy szólt, mint egy ének, alulról felfelé, legyen az összefonva, akkor megvalósul. A házasság készen áll. A tanú felvétele, 2025. június 9. A tanú Prevostot figyelt meg a The Cult második rituális gyilkosságánál és kannibalizálásánál 1983. június 22-én ugyanabban a barlangkamrában, amikor, 19 éves volt. A szertartásra bevittek egy fiatal lányt, aki még aznap eltűnt Rómában, Emanuela Orlandit. Emanuela és a tanú is kénytelen volt végignézni, ahogy egy meztelen olasz férfit darabokra vágnak előttük, elveszítve ujjait, fülét, orrát, nyelvét és péniszét. Addigra felszentelt papként Prevost részt vett a férfi kínzásában és feldarabolásában, és elmondta Emanuelának és a tanúnak, ez megtörténik veled, ha nem engedelmeskedsz. A Prevost ezután a szájukba kényszerítette a halott testrészeit, ugyanúgy, mint a szentáldozáskor, a tanú szerint. Azt állítja, hogy őt és Emanuela Orlandit ezután áramütéssel kínozták. És a Prevost és mások análisan megerőszakolták. Emanuelának a Prevost mondta, most Martina, vagyis hogy Ausztriába és Svájcba kell küldeni. A tanú felvétele, 2025. június 11, további tanúvallomások a Docket-filban. Emanuela Orlandi Karol Wojtyla előtt 1977-ben. Eltűnt. Második 1989-ben B-tanút 7 évesen elvitte a The Cult szertartásaira Essenben, Németországban és Brüsszelben, Belgiumban az Opus Dei papja, Br. Lohaus. Megkínozták, megerőszakolták, és arra kondicionálták, hogy részt vegyen az újszülöttek áldozati meggyilkolásában és kannibalizálásában. Innen B-tanút rendszeresen Angliába szállították, beleértve a Buckingham palota alatti militarizált alaksori épületegyüttest is. Ott megfigyelte a ketrecben lévő gyerekek sorát, köztük azokat is, akiknek a borotvált fejükből kilógtak a vezetékek, és fehér ruhás férfiak figyelték őket. Egy hegyi kastélyba vittek, azt hiszem, Skóciában. Elvittek egy terembe, és 2 fekete ruhás férfi kiterítette a karomat és a lábamat egy asztalra. Az egyikük azt mondta, most pillangó vagy, meg fogsz változni. Aztán Erzsébet királynő bejött a szobába fiaival, Károllyal és Andrással, és azt mondta: most pillangó vagy, és elkezdtek áramütést okozni nekem, újra és újra. Lásd az első lábjegyzetet, a szeme olyan kegyetlen volt. Azt hiszem, akkor történt, hogy Charles és Andrew megerőszakolt, újra és újra. Később, amikor a ketrecben tartottak, láttam, hogy Andrew kirángat egy fiatal lányt, és egy hosszú késsel halálra szúrta. B-tanú felvétele, 2025. június 24. B-tanú ezt követően 10 évet 1-990-2001. Belgiumban töltött, ahol a The Cult felhasználta politikusok szexuális zsarolására. Kultuszkezelője volt Michel Nihul elítélt gyermekkereskedő, Mark Dutroux gyermeksorozatgyilkos bűntársa és Reinhard Marx müncheni katolikus érsek. B-tanú azt állítja, hogy ebben az időszakban, 1999 tavaszán New Yorkba szállították, és egy szadomazó szexorgyában használták, amelyben gyerekek vettek részt Jeffrey Epstein magas lakásában. B-tanú azt állítja, hogy az orgia résztvevői között volt Donald Trump is. Azt állítja, hogy az egyik szobában, amely úgy nézett ki, mint egy stúdió, tubákfilm készült, amelyben megerőszakoltak és halálra kínoztak egy 5 év körüli ázsiai lányt. B-tanút az egyik férfi, aki Trumpot az orgiára kísérte, arra kényszerítette, hogy nézze meg a gyilkosságot, olyannak tűnt, mint egy testőr. Nagyon gonosz kinézetű ember volt, aki fel volt fegyverkezve. Trump késznek hívta, lásd a második lábjegyzetet. Jeffrey Epstein és Donald Trump 1997-ben, 2 évvel a B-tanú által leírt eset előtt. Kiegészítő megjegyzés Donald Trump további bűnösségéről. Trump kapcsolata Jeffrey Epstein elítélt gyermekerőszakolóval és emberkereskedővel évtizedeken átívelt. Az 1980-as évek óta Trump rendszeresen szocializálódott Epsteinnel, aki leírta a hosszú távú és mély kapcsolat Trumpal. A 2008-ban benyújtott második körzeti fellebbviteli bíróság dokumentumai szerint Epstein megerőszakolta és emberkereskedelem áldozatává tette Virginia Giuffre Trump mar-a-lagói rezidenciáján, ahol fürdőgondnokként dolgozott. 2025. Április 24-én bekövetkezett hirtelen halála előtt Giuffre arra utalt, hogy Donald Trump tudott Epstein kiskorúak megerőszakolásáról és kereskedelméről, és részt vett abban, és azt állította, hogy erre vonatkozó kijelentéseit törölték a bírósági jegyzőkönyvekből. Az, hogy Trump a közelmúltban megtagadta a lezárt Epstein akták megnyitását, inkább ennek az összejátszásnak a bizonyítéka. Prince Andrew Windsor, a kultusz gyermekgyilkosságának dokumentált résztvevője a walesi Carnarvon kastélyban testvérével, Charles-al és apjával. Philip Mountbattennel együtt Epstein közeli barátja és összeesküvőtársa volt. Andrew számos ilyen találkozón találkozott Donald Trumpal, források szerint. Trump ellentmondott magának, amikor az újságírók Andrewval való kapcsolatáról kérdezték, először azt mondta, hogy soha nem találkozott a herceggel, majd kijelentette, ő egy szórakoztató srác, akivel együtt lehet. Az Epstein, Trump és Andrew Windsor közötti bűnözői háromszög további bizonyítékait az ügyészség fogja kidolgozni. Harmadik. C-tanú résztvevőként jelen volt az első pontban leírt római kultusz 1983. Június 22-i ünnepségén. Megerősíti a tanú beszámolóját az olasz férfi Prevost általi hosszantartó kínzásáról és meggyilkolásáról, valamint a tanú és Emanuela Orlandi jelenlétéről ezen a rituálén. C-szemtanú azt állítja, hogy az áldozat egy hajléktalan volt, akit az olasz karabinieri rendőrség szállított a kultusznak. C-tanú, a kult adminisztrátora a következőket teszi hozzá. Mint minden kultikus szertartás Rómában 1962. októbere után, az 1983. júniusi esemény is a vatikáni nekropoliszban történt, közvetlenül az obeliszk alatt a Szent Péter téren. Az úgynevezett Lucifer sírjában, a következő 8. oldalon található sematikus térképen, U-ként jelölve. Mint minden ilyen rituálét, az egész eseményt is lefilmezték, és a kultusz titkos archívumában tárolták a vatikáni könyvtár alaksori tárolójában. C-tanú kijelenti, hogy ezeket a rituális kínzásról és gyilkolásról forgatott jeleneteket rutinszerűen sokszorosítják, és tubákfilmként árulják a katolikus egyházi körökben. A felvételeket a résztvevők zsarolására is használják, ha megpróbálják leleplezni a kultuszt, és ezáltal eszközt jelentenek a rituálé résztvevőinek hűségének biztosítására. Az olyan résztvevők, mint a prevost, akik fiatalon bizonyítják hűségüket a kulthoz, felkerülnek a pop és a rangidős bíboros számára elfogadható jövőbeli jelöltek vörös listájára. C-tanú azt is kijelenti, hogy az 1983. június 22-i ceremónia után Emanuela Orlandit a kultusz svájci, német és belga hálózataiba szállították, ahol arra kötelezték, hogy szexuálisan csapdába ejtse vagy meggyilkolja a kultusz ellenfeleit. Köztük politikusokat, újságírókat, ügyvédeket és bírókat, és becsalogatni a gyerekeket és szüleiket a kultuszba. Forrás: Guide to the Vatican Necropolis, Michele Basso, Fabbrica di Pietro. B. C-tanú kijelenti, hogy 2 leendő vatikáni elöljáró is jelen volt a kultusz 1983. június 22-i gyilkossági rituáléján, és részt vett abban, és sok más időpontban, Pietro Parolin leendő bíboros és vatikáni külügyminiszter, majd a Pápai Egyházi Akadémia joghallgatója. És Donald Trump leendő érseke és munkatársa, Timothy Dolan, aki akkor a Vatikán, apostoli nunciature, papja és titkára volt Washington DC-ben. C-tanú kijelenti, hogy a kultusz szertartásai között magasrangú katonai, vállalati és kormányzati tisztviselők. És szorosan kapcsolódnak a farmakológiai és elektronikus biofegyverek kísérleti programjaihoz. Lásd az F-tanú vallomását, C-tanú felvétele, 2025. július 2. 4. D-tanú, egy rendőrségi forrás azt állítja, hogy az Interpol, valamint a belga és az olasz kormány zárt aktákat tartalmaz, amelyek tele vannak bizonyítékokkal a kultusz tevékenységéről. Valamint az általa az 1930-as évek óta bebörtönzöttek, megkínzottak és meggyilkoltak listáját. Az olasz kormányok és bíróságok rendszeresen megvédik a római egyházat a bűnügyi nyomozásoktól. És megtiltják a rendőrségnek a Vatikánba való belépést. A belga rendőrség 1998 és 2017 között 4 különböző alkalommal kísérelte meg letartóztatni a kult résztvevőit, de a belga királyi család és katonaság, valamint a vatikáni kúria megállította őket. D-tanú felvétele, 2025. július 4. 5. E-tanú, az olasz kormány és az Európai Unió egyik forrása kijelenti, hogy a Vatikán és a világ nagyhatalmai közötti titkos diplomáciai és pénzügyi megállapodások megakadályozzák a kormányokat vagy bíróságaikat abban, hogy nyomozást folytassanak vagy vádat emeljenek akár a kultusz, akár a szomszédos gyermekkereskedő hálózatok ellen a római egyházban. Ezt bizonyították Európában és Amerikában olyan kormányzati intézkedések, amelyek tiltják az egyház ellen indított pereket és blokkolják a jogszabályokat. Például a Trump kormányzat nemrégiben akadályozta Washington állam törvényét, amely előírja, hogy a római egyház megbüntesse a soraikban tevékenykedő gyermekerőszakolókat és emberkereskedőket. Trump főügyésze, Pam Bondi személyesen avatkozott be a washingtoni perbe, miután konzultált a Vatikán amerikai pápai nunciusával, Christophe Pierre haiti bíborossal, a prevost közeli munkatársával. Lásd a 3. lábjegyzetet, e-tanú felvétel, 2025. július 6-7. 6. Witness F. a Pfizer Pharmaceuticals kutatója, a Vatikáni Bank, JOR, és a Pápai Tudományos Akadémia tanácsadója. Witness F. szerint az JOR amellett, hogy jelentős befektető volt olyan gyógyszeripari vállalatokban, mint a Novartis, a Pfizer, az Eli Lilly és a GlaxoSmithKline. Finanszírozta a gyógyszeralapú biofegyver és nanorészecske implantátumok fejlesztését az úgynevezett COVID szérumon belül. Ez utóbbit a Vatikán által finanszírozott kutatók hozták létre a kínai hadsereggel és wuhani létesítményeivel szövetségben. F. tanú kijelenti, hogy a római egyház rendszeresen ellátja a gyerekeket ezeknek a gyógyszeripari vállalatoknak és kutatólaboratóriumaiknak akaratlan drogtesztekhez és egyéb kísérletekhez. Ezen emberi tengeri malacok egy részét a kulton és kiterjedt gyermekkereskedő hálózatain keresztül szerzik be, többek között az Ndrangheta néven ismert európai bűnügynökséggel szövetkezve. F. tanú szerint az ezekben a kísérletekben használt gyerekek egyike sem maradhat életben.
Kijelenti, hogy az olyan cégek felső vezetői, mint a Pfizer, tisztában vannak ezekkel a bűncselekményekkel, és szándékosan lehetővé teszik azokat. 2020-ban és 2021-ben személyesen tájékoztattam Albert Bourlát, a Pfizer vezérigazgatója, a Covid szérum változatok tökéletesítésének módszereiről, beleértve a gyermekek drogtesztekben való felhasználását. Bourla helyeselte, ahogy azt is, hogy a kínai börtönökben politikai fogvatartottakat használtak fel drogtesztjeinkhez, még akkor is, ha többségük ennek következtében meghalt. Bármi is a leghatékonyabb, ő mondta el. Albert Bourla, a Pfizer Pharmaceuticals vezérigazgatója. A Vatikán, a Big Pharma és a szervezett bűnözés közötti szoros kapcsolat részeként az egyház szervesen kapcsolódik az illegális kábítószerkereskedelemhez, és óriási hasznot húz belőle. F. tanú szerint a papok minden szinten rutinszerűen kereskednek metot, kokaint és heroint az egyház mexikói, kolumbiai és ázsiai drogkartel munkatársain, valamint a jelenlegi Pope-hez, Robert Prevosthoz és elődjéhez, Jorge Bergogliohoz fűződő közvetlen kapcsolataikon keresztül. F. tanú leírta azt a találkozót, amelyen 2024. március 8-án Rómában vett részt, amelyet Pietro Parolin bíboros, Vatikán külügyminisztere hívott össze, aki a volt, Ferenc pápa, Jorge Bergoglio nevében járt el. A találkozó célja az volt, hogy a vatikáni bank kábítószer befektetéseit kiterjesszék a nyugati féltekén álló offshore vállalatok álcázása alatt, beleértve azokat is, amelyeket latin-amerikai drogkartellek irányítanak a Deutsche Bankon és az HSBC-on keresztül. Ez nem volt szokatlan, mondja F. tanú. Sok ilyen találkozón vettem részt, bár általában kevésbé magasrangú előjárókkal. A lényeg az, hogy az egyház a világ kábítószerkereskedelmének és társszervezeteinek, a fegyverkereskedelemnek és az emberi rabszolgakereskedelemnek az egyik fő szereplője. Túl jövedelmező ahhoz, hogy az egyház ne legyen. F. tanú leírja a jelenlegi, Leo, pápa, Robert Prevost szoros kapcsolatát elődje hosszú múltjával a gyermekekkel való nemi erőszak és emberkereskedelem eltitkolásában, lásd a 4. lábjegyzetet. És ennek megfelelő szoros kapcsolataival a latin-amerikai kábítószerkereskedelemmel és kartellekkel. Ő, előzetes, gyakran, ként, a második latin-amerikai pápaként emlegetik, és jó okkal. Évek óta kapcsolatban áll perui és kolumbiai drogbárókkal, és rendszeres vendége volt Pablo Escobarnak a bulijain. Bergogliohoz hasonlóan ő, Prevost, is ágostonrendi priorja lett katonai és bűnözői vezetőkkel való kapcsolatai miatt, valamint azért is, mert az észak-perui Chiclayo egyházmegyéjének kikötőin és a szomszédos Limán keresztül zsírozta Kína Dél-Amerikába való belépését. Csak kövesse a pénzt, és mindig Rómába vezet. http://url. Bezáró zárójel. F. tanú terjedelmes archív bizonyítékokat nyújtott be az ügyészségnek, amelyek igazolják állításait, beleértve az évekig tartó levelezést, az ülések jegyzőkönyveit, a kutatási adatokat, valamint a Vatikán, Kína, az Egyesült Államok és a Big Pharma vállalati partnerei közötti protokoll megállapodásokat. Ezt az anyagot egyelőre az ügyészség zárt bizonyítási jegyzéke tartalmazza, amely 2025. szeptember 1-i kezdetekor kerül be a bírósági jegyzőkönyvbe. Witness F. Recordings, 2025. július 9-11. 7. G. tanú a Vatikáni Bank, JOR, alkalmazottja, aki összekötő tiszt volt a Deutsche Bankkal, az JOR egyik fő partnerével. G. Személyes ismeretekkel rendelkezik a Deutsche Bank két tisztjének, Thomas Baersnek és Valentin Broeck-Schmidtnek a meggyilkolásáról, amelyet a vatikáni Santa Alleanza titkos ügynökség, Francis, pápa,
Jorge Bergoglio hivatali ideje alatt gyilkolt meg. Baers és Broeck-Schmidt is a Deutsche Banktól és titkos orosz és vatikáni befektetőitől Donald Trumpnak nyújtott vitatott kölcsönökhöz kötődött. Az egyik bankár, Valentin Broeck-Schmidt több száz dokumentumot adott át az FBI nyomozóinak ezekről a kapcsolatokról, közvetlenül azelőtt, hogy 2022. áprilisában holtan találták. A másik férfi, Thomas Baers Trump és Jeffrey Epstein közeli barátja volt, akit 2019. november 19-én holtan találtak Malibuban, mindössze néhány nappal azelőtt, hogy nyilvánosságra került Baer Trumppal való kapcsolatának története és a Vatikánhoz kapcsolódó bankhitelek. G. tanú szerint a Deutsche Bank évek óta erősen vállalta az egyház bűnözői tevékenységét. Dollármilliárdokat mosott tisztára a Vatikánnak és maffiatársainak, valamint a Trump Internationalnek és mexikói drogkartel partnereinek. Baers éppen beszélni kezdett a szövetségiekkel arról, amit tudott. Ezt követően megtudtam, hogy Baerst és Broeck-Schmidt is megölték Santa Alleanza bérgyilkosai Domenico Gianni igazgatójuk utasítására, aki személyesen Ferenc pápának volt felelős. És továbbra is Leo pápa esküdt ügynöke. Witness G. Recordings, 2025. Július 17.
Vatikáni bérgyilkos, fent, a Santa Alleanza rendezője, Domenico Gianni, és a Deutsche Bank áldozatai, Valentin Broeck-Schmidt, lent, és Thomas Baers, valamint haláluk haszonélvezője, Donald Trump. 8. H. I. és J. tanúk mind a kultusz túlélői, akik egymástól függetlenül azonosították második. János Pál pápát, Benedeket, Ferencet és Leót, Karol Wojtyla, Joseph Ratzinger, Jorge Bergoglio és Robert Prevost, a kultikus rituálék résztvevőiként, ahol H. első és J-at megerőszakolták, megkínozták,
és más gyerekek megölésére késztették.
H. tanút, aki Németországból származik, 5 évesen a kultusz rabszolgává tette, és a Paderborn melletti Böselager családi birtokon raboskodott. A kultusz ezen a birtokon Franz Hengsbach és Lorenz Jaeger bíborosok védelme alatt működött, akik a náci SS, Knights of Darkness, áldozati kultuszának egykori tagjai. Valamint a leendő, Benedikt, pápa, Joseph Ratzinger bíboros. Hengsbach, Jaeger és Ratzinger felváltva erőszakolták meg és kínozták meg H. tanút, és arra kényszerítették, hogy elvágja más gyerekek és újszülöttek torkát.
H. tanú azt állítja, hogy 1969 tavaszán Ratzinger kerozinnal halálra égetett egy 7 éves zsidó lányt, Eloise Schwimmert a kultusz szertartásának részeként.
Philipp Böselager báró segítette, lent, egykori náci tiszt, aki az ingatlan tulajdonosa volt, és fiatal kora óta a kultusz tagja volt. Philipp Böselager a mauzóleumban, ahol a 9. kör kultusz működik Paderborn közelében, Németországban. Első tanú, aki Olaszországból származik, a kultuszban nevelkedett, de eleinte nem áldozatként.
Ikertestvérét feláldozták előtte a beiktatás részeként. Őt is megerőszakolta és megkínozta Robert Prevost egy kultikus szertartáson, amikor fiatal pap volt, valamikor az 1980-as évek elején Rómában. Az első tanú azt állítja, hogy szemtanúja volt, ahogy Prevost kizsigerelt egy még élő újszülött babát, és elfogyasztotta a húsát latinkántálás közepette ugyanazon a kultikus szertartáson. J. tanút, aki eredetileg Belgiumból származott, de 5 éves korában kultikus szülei Münchenbe, Németországba költöztek. A kultusz által vezetett kísérleti központban helyezték el Münchenen kívül. Az akkori püspök, most pedig Reinhard Marx bíboros fennhatósága alatt működött, aki jelen volt a kultikus rituálékon. Dr. Weber otthonában, egy hamis fal mögött található a központ több tucat gyerekkel, akiket bekábítottak és ketrecben tartottak. J. tanú és 2 katolikus nővér rendszeresen vért vett ki ezekből a gyerekekből, és hűtőszekrényben tárolta. Amikor a gyerekeket eléggé elvérezték, meghaltak vagy megölték őket a kultikus szertartásokon. Jé, szerint. Mindent megtettem, amit mondtak, ezért mondtak nekem dolgokat. Azt mondták, hogy a vér a katonaságnak és néhány gyógyszergyártó cégnek és a kísérleteiknek való. Azt mondták nekem, hogy a gyerekeket a helyi katolikus árvaházakból hozták, néhányat pedig bevándorlási központokból. Egyik gyerek sem bírta túl sokáig. Mindig új gyerekek érkeztek a halottak helyére.
A püspök, Marx, valahányszor szertartás volt, odajött, ő felügyelte az egészet, és engem néztek.
Ratzinger egyszer ott volt, soha nem felejtem el gonosz tekintetét. Láttam egyszer halálra folytani egy kis zsidó fiút, Luciennek hívták, csak 4-5 éves volt. Ratzinger megerőszakolta, majd megfojtotta egy kötéllel. Akkor sem nézhettem félre, sem amikor az újszülötteket ölték. Ha valaki ideges lenne, azonnal elvágnák a torkát. H.I. és J. tanúfelvételek külön készültek 2025. július 18-23. között. Megjegyzés a különleges ügyészségtől. Ez az időközi jelentés az irodánk által 2025. június 2 óta megszerzett bizonyítékokról nem teljes körű, és nem tartalmazza a folyamatban lévő nyomozásunk során összegyűjtött tanúkat és bizonyítékokat.
A bizonyítékok teljes dossziéját a Nemzetközi Közjogi Bíróság, ICLCJ, elé terjesztik, amikor az 2025. szeptember 1-én, hétfőn 10 óra GMT-kor összeül. Az Interpolon belüli munkatársaink és forrásaink megtudták, hogy a Vatikán titkos műveleti részlege, a Santa Alleanza szorosan figyelemmel kíséri munkánkat, és megpróbálhatja szabotálni azt.
Mivel megkísérelte az ICLCJ által a Vatikán és a brit korona ellen indított első peres eljárást 2012. júliusa és 2013. februárja. Ennek megfelelően megosztottuk bizonyítékainkat különböző kormányokkal, és bevontuk a rendőrséget és a katonaságot, hogy a bíróság különleges serifjeként járjanak el. Ezek az erők fellépnek Santa Alleanza és az azt irányítók ellen, ha ügynökeik megpróbálják megakadályozni, hogy az ICLCJ eljárjon ebben az ügyben. Figyelmeztessük a bűnösöket és bűntársaikat, hogy ne avatkozzanak bele a bíróság munkájába, nehogy letartóztassák és megvádolják őket az igazságszolgáltatás akadályozásával, valamint a bűnözők segítésével és felbujtásával, valamint az emberiség elleni bűncselekményekkel. George Dufort, LLB, az ICLCJ különleges ügyészének titkára. Kevin Annett, M.A., M.Div., a különleges ügyész tanácsadója. 2025. augusztus 8 péntek. itchoffice@protonmail.com. Első lábjegyzet. Ez a hivatkozása, most egy pillangó, vagy a hírhedt Mac-Ultra elmekontroll programokban használt neurolingvisztikai kondicionálási módszer, amely korai szakaszában a The Monarch Butterfly projekt kódnevet kapta. A kondicionálás meggyőzi az alanyt, hogy kitörölték és új lényé változtatták, mint amikor a hernyóból báb, majd pillangó lesz, féregből egy kedves, repülőlény. Rev. Cathy O'Brien, Amerika transformációja, 1995. Ennek a nyelvnek a használata a kultusz rituáléi során egy másik jele annak, hogy kötődik az Mac-Ultra és katonai, vállalati és politikai irányítói elmerekonstrukciós programjához. Footnote 2. A Keats, aki elkísérte Donald Trumpot erre a gyermekszex orgiára, és akit Trump megszólított, minden valószínűség szerint ez az ember, lent, Keith Schiller. A Trump biztonsági főtanácsadója és testőre, valamint az ovális iroda műveletek korábbi igazgatója. A B-tanú által leírt incidens idején Schillert éppen Trump bérelte fel főtestőrének, miután Schiller manhattani rendőrként és nyomozóként dolgozott. Schillert Stormy Daniels-nek nevezte el undorító Strichy Donaldnak, a Daniels által Trump ellen indított per során. Harmadik lábjegyzet. Az ügyészség terjedelmes bizonyítékokat fog benyújtani a bíróságnak a kormányok és a Vatikán közötti megállapodásokról. Beleértve a titkos, Financial Concordats felhasználását nemzetállamok és államfők megvesztegetésére és pénzügyi ellenőrzésére. http://URL. Az egyház és az állam legfelső szintjén fennálló hűség kötelékének kirívó példáját szemlélteti a Trump rezsim közelmúltbeli beavatkozása. Hogy jogilag segítse a római egyházat a gyermekek elleni bűnözői vállalkozásaiban. Ez is egy példa Donald Trump, a Vatikáni Bank és a Deutsche Bank szoros kapcsolatára, valamint a szervezett bűnözésre. Ezt az összefüggést jelentésünk 7. pontja írja le Trump nyilvánvaló bűnrészességére hivatkozva a Deutsche Bank tisztviselőinek meggyilkolásában Valentin Broeck-Schmidt és Thomas Bowers. 4-es lábjegyzet. Az ágostonrendi rendvezetőjeként Prevost hosszú éveken át rendszeresen titkolta a gyermekek megerőszakolását és kereskedelmét a perui Chiclayo egyházmegyében. 2022-ben az egykori gyerek áldozatai nemi erőszak és kínzás Ricardo Yesken Paiva és Eleuterio Vázquez González papok által a Prevost elhallgattatta őket. És leállította az ügyben folyó rendőrségi nyomozást. Egy volt egyházmegyei alkalmazott szerint. Ő, Prevost, maga is részt vett azokban a beteg rituálékban ott fent a hegyekben, ahol az összes indiai gyereket lemészárolták. Miért nyomozna maga után? www.murderbidecree.com.
Huge thank you for joining us. Kevin is back. He's got huge news to share. I've been reading the legal paperwork he sent me pertaining to the case against Pope Leo. It is hard-hitting, graphic, stomach-sickening in parts of it, but he's laid it out legally with his witnesses. Absolutely mind-blowing. And you know, one of the most important points that he makes in the legal paperwork is that these people who are at the top of society, whether you're the Pope, whether you're a king, an emperor, whatever you are subject to the law just like the rest of us. And if you think you are above the law, Kevin is going to come and get you, folks. So I'll hand it over to Kevin right now, just so he can pick up on that. But we're going to be talking about Epstein, Prince Andrew. There's a lot to go over tonight.
Hi, Sean.
All right, Kevin. Yeah, thank you for coming back.
It's great to be back, especially right now. What I'm going to talk about today is a report. It just came out from the International Common Law Court of Justice. Now, as folks know from previous interviews, the court convened in the summer to look into new evidence against the present Pope Leo, Robert Prevost, but also his accomplices. And the further we dug on this, the more tunnels we discovered. And what's incredible is we now have 10 eyewitnesses who've come forward, and their evidence is in this report we're going to talk about today. 5 of these people are survivors of this Ninth Circle cult. And in other words, they were used in the ceremonies, kept alive after for different reasons. And the other 5 are actual insiders. There's a former member of the Ninth Circle. There's a Vatican employee, an informant in the Italian government, an Interpol investigator, and a research scientist with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. Now, the reason those are all interrelated is we've discovered that this Ninth Circle isn't just some arcane satanic cult. It was very integrated for many years with the military, with a lot of the mind control experiments to find the limits of human intelligence in order to control it. But there's more than that going on. There's actual soul captivation. And we're going to get into this. We have a map of the grotto beneath the Vatican. It's showing a thing called the Tomb of Lucifer, where all these things take place. The term Ninth Circle, in the Latin translation, it's nonus perfidia. Now, in Latin, that means not the Ninth Circle, it means the ninth betrayal. And by betrayal, they're talking about to go down through hell, you keep sacrificing or betraying the things that make us human. You know, like love, people know about, so-called 9 sins, greed, gluttony, lust, all that stuff. But the lowest circle of hell has to do with if you betrayed a sacred trust, like the trust of a child, or the integrity of your own soul. That is to be sacrificed in order to gain ultimate power. And that's the meaning behind these rituals where children are systematically tortured and cannibalized after they're done away with. So Let me just give a little brief overview. And for folks who are watching, don't forget, this report is now posted online, murderbydecree.com, under ITCCS updates. You'll see, if you go to that interim report of the special prosecutor. So please read along and look at some of these images and the evidence we're going to be talking about. The case had to do with two aspects. First of all, the guilt of Pope Leo himself, Robert Prevost, and then out of that, all of his accomplices. And we're talking people like King Charles now, Charles Arthur Windsor, Prince Andrew Albert Windsor, archbishops like Timothy Dolan, who's a good friend of Donald Trump's. Trump himself is mentioned in this adjudication as being a participant in some of these activities. Top cardinals like Pietro Parolin, Bernard Marx, Jeffrey Epstein was a participant in these things, along with other officials of the church. And we mentioned Big Pharma because they were using the ceremonies as a way to test out various drugs. And they were, again, part of this whole military use of the Ninth Circle rituals. Let me start with, that first image you have of the present Pope Robert Prevost as a newly ordained member of the Augustinian order meeting John Paul II. This is in 1983, the picture right after the Prevost ordination. Now, according to the first eyewitness, we call him Witness A, while still a novice in the Augustinian order, Robert Prevost, that's him on the left, the present Pope Leo XIV, was observed by Witness A participating in an induction ceremony of the Ninth Circle on October 17, 1978, in a grotto chamber beneath the Vatican. The ceremony was presided over by Karol Wojtyła, that's Pope Paul II right there in the picture, who he had just recently been elected the Pope. Now, Witness A states that she saw Wojtyła kill a pregnant teenage girl at the ceremony, cut open her womb to remove the belly, which was then eaten by the cult participants, including Robert Prevost. Then Prevost spread the baby's blood on the Witness A and beat and sexually violated it. She positively identified Prevost from a photo of him taken during the same period, this photo here. Now, that's a standard ritual of the Ninth Circle, but what was significant about that was that Prevost was vetted at a young age, and once you participate in these Ninth Circle cults, your name goes on a red list. You can then be elected as senior cardinal or pope one day, which he was. And others who don't participate or refuse, they go on a blacklist and they stay in the lower hierarchy. They're never allowed to go to the top. So in other words, the entire institution and all of its corporate and political connections, they're all part of this Ninth Circle cult. And it embraces not just church people, but corporate directors, top military leaders, government officials. And one of the ways that they keep governments in line, of course, is through the what's called the financial concordat, where Vatican money is used to bribe governments and chiefs and heads of state all over the world. Now, if you go to the next picture, there was a woman, a young girl called Emanuela Orlandi, who disappeared in Rome. And Witness A was present when she was brought into a cult ceremony. She says there's a picture of Emanuela as a little girl with the same Pope, John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła. And the Witness A says that she saw Prevost at a second ritual murder and cannibalizing on June 22nd, 1983, which is the very day that Emanuela Orlandi vanished. Emanuela and the witness were both forced to watch as a naked Italian man was cut to pieces in front of them, losing his fingers, ears, nose, tongue, and penis. So it has to do with this mass, and in fact they're conducting, in which they're inducting these women to what's called brides of Satan, who are then used. Often they're either set up as breeders to create, to get pregnant, and then the newborn is offered, or they, like Emanuela, was sent out brainwashed to entrap other people into the cult, to sexually entrap politicians or sometimes kill them. They're programmed assassins as well as part of this. Now, all at the same time, the military is in there, and drug companies and others trying out techniques and utilizing these people themselves. Also, she mentioned that all these rituals are filmed. And they sell for a lot of money, the snuff films, through Catholic Church circles and others. So it's very lucrative as well. Okay, so that's like one example. Now, here's another one, Witness B. She was like Witness A from Germany. She was taken at age 7 to Essen, Germany, in Brussels by an Opus Dei priest called Brother Lohas. She was tortured, violated, and conditioned to participate in the killing and cannibalizing of newborns. From there, she was routinely trafficked to England, including to a militarized basement compound beneath Buckingham Palace. There she observed rows of children in cages, including those with wires protruding from their shaved heads, being monitored by men in lab coats. And this is her quote. This is a different woman now, different Witness B. I was taken to a castle in the mountains. I think it was in Scotland. I was taken to a hall, and my arms and legs were spread out on a table by 2 men in black. One of them said, "You're a butterfly now. You're going to be changed." Now, there's a footnote about that reference to a butterfly. And it was basically an MK Ultra term. Kathy O'Brien in her book talks about this. The reference to "now you are a butterfly" is a method of neuro-linguistic programming used in MK Ultra mind control programs, which was called the Monarch Butterfly Project in its early stages. The conditioning convinces the subject that he or she has been erased and transformed into a new creature, as when a caterpillar becomes a pupa and then a butterfly. Or to quote Kathy O'Brien in her book Transformation of America, "From a worm to a lovely flying creature." The use of this language during the cult rituals is another indication of its ties to the mind reconstruction agenda of MK Ultra and its military, corporate, and political controllers. So what we're uncovering here is the fact that a lot of the techniques now being used against all of us, electronically and through other means, first chemically, but then now electronically, they are perfected in these ninth circle experiments and ceremonies under the guise or the concealment of it being a satanic ritual. This is not unusual. Often we know from people who survived military experiments that they're given post-hypnotic suggestions saying you were part of a satanic cult, to conceal the fact that no, it was government and military programs, training these people. So, that's kind of self-evident after you look at all this. Now, moving along, we've got as well, let me get on to Witness C. And I mixed up my papers here, so just give me a moment. Did you have any questions or anything? Feel free to jump in, Sean, while I'm finding my stuff here.
No, I'm just, the level of what you're saying, it's absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to reiterate, for the viewers, we've got almost 2,000 watching live, and all of Kevin's links, books, you can support him, all in the description box below this video, folks. Lots more details, lots more information in his books. Many of the viewers have picked them up and they've really enjoyed them. So please check those out.
Thanks, Sean. I want to say, too, that the two of us who helped put together this report for the special prosecutor, myself and another man who's the administrator for the court, George Dufour, we're aware of the fact that we're treading on new ground here, and there's a lot of danger involved for ourselves and the cult witnesses, right? The people, the women who survived these things. So I wanted to say to listeners, this knowledge gives us all a responsibility to do something about it. And we're going to talk about that later in the show. So please hang in there with us. Witness B also spent 10 years. Now, she was the one who was sent to Buckingham Palace and was taken up to Scotland. We just talked about the butterfly conditioning. She spent 10 years after that during the 1990s in Belgium, where she was used by the Ninth Circle to sexually blackmail politicians. And her cult handler included convicted child trafficker Michel Nehoul, who is an accomplice of, if you remember, Marc Dutroux in Belgium, the child killer, and Catholic Archbishop Reinhard Marx of Munich, who's still quite prominent in the church. But Witness B states that during the same period, in the spring of 1999, she was flown to New York City and used in a sadomasochistic sex orgy involving children at the high-rise apartment of guess who? Jeffrey Epstein. eyewitness B said that both of them knew children were being violated and done away with at this Epstein party, spring of 1999 in Manhattan. Now, just a supplemental note on that, Trump's association with Epstein spans decades. Since the 1980s, he regularly socialized with Epstein, who described his, quote, long-standing and deep relationship with Donald. Epstein trafficked and violated a woman called Virginia Giuffre at Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, where she worked there as a spa attendant. According to Second Circuit Court of Appeals documents filed in 2008. Now, this Virginia Giuffre was in the process of bringing this out when she suddenly died this year, April 24th. She was in a custody battle for her own children, and then she, quote, commits suicide. Now, you're going to see the body count rise. It's going to be like the last scene in Hamlet by the end of this, because there'll be bodies all over the stage, all of them tied into Trump, including two bankers for Deutsche Bank, who died when the news began to break about their association. So anyway, that's more on that. But as part of that, let's talk about witness C now. Okay. Prince Andrew, a documented participant in the cult's child killing activities, as we mentioned before, witness B, taken to up to Scotland, you know, that butterfly thing they did, and where both Prince Andrew and Charles were present. Now, Prince Andrew is a documented not only participant, but a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's, as we know. Andrew met Trump on many occasions, according to the sources. Trump contradicted himself when asked by reporters about his relationship with Andrew. He said at first he had never met the prince, and then he said he's a fun guy to be with. You know, another one of his gaffes. But that whole aspect of it isn't just about Trump. It's the fact that heads of state all over the world are tied into these Ninth Circle activities. So we're not just talking the church officialdom, but state and big money as well. Now, witness C. This is not a victim, but an insider in the Ninth Circle. So don't forget, in order to function, they have a whole support network around them. They have Vatican officials who set up safe houses, who buy off police, who provide the children, get rid of the remains, all that. This witness C was a former member of that support group around the Ninth Circle. He was present at the same ceremony in June 1983 where Emanuela Orlandi and the first witness were witnessed the killing of that Italian man. He confirms their accounts that this man was tortured to death, including by the present Pope, Robert Prevost, and John Paul II. And he claims that there was another sacrificial victim at the same ceremony, a homeless man delivered to the cult by the Italian Carabinieri police. Witness C, the cult administrator, also adds the following. The June 1983 event occurred in the Vatican necropolis, which is directly beneath the obelisk in St. Peter's Square, the so-called Tomb of Lucifer. Now, do you have that map, the schematic map? There was two of them showing the grotto beneath the Vatican. And it's interesting, that's where I, without knowing, I conducted that exorcism in 2009, directly above this thing. And, you know, the hurricane hit the next day, tornado hits Rome the next day, because we're at that energy point. And if you look on the map here, you, kind of halfway down on the left, that's what's called the tomb of Lucifer. And I think if you go down a bit more, you'll see a colored image of it on the next map down. Oh, there was another one, I think. And anyway, this tomb U is pre-Constantinian. In other words, it's before the Church of Rome was ever created. It's from Roman times. And in effect, and the scuttlebutt, according to witnesses and others around the Vatican, is this is a entry point into an interdimensional portal, in effect. It is the way into hell. And that's one of the sources of its power. The witness C says, like all the rituals since 1962, all of the Ninth Circle ceremonies are held right there. The entire event is filmed and stored in the cult's secret archives within the sub-basement storage vaults of the Vatican Library. And of course, as I mentioned, they're used in snuff films. But they're also used to record everyone present so they can be controlled. Anyone who shows up can then be blackmailed and that way ensure their loyalty. And so that's in terms of where we're talking about. We're talking right beneath the Vatican in St. Peter's Square. Okay. Now, with the same witness, who is the working with the support group around the Ninth Circle, he states that 2 future Vatican prelates were also present at this 1983 ritual at the cult. The guy who's presently the Vatican Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, who was then a law student at the Pontifical Academy in Rome, and a future archbishop and close associate of Donald Trump, Timothy Dolan. Now, Dolan is a New York archbishop, and he was the one who Trump was pushing to become pope, because they're good friends. They're both participants in these rituals. Timothy Dolan was present at this cult ritual, according to Witness C. And he was, again, a young priest and actually a secretary at the Vatican, quote, embassy in Washington, D.C. So here's the thing. These guys are connected at a high level diplomatically. That's, is that Dolan?
Yeah.
Or Mark, okay. They get these guys into high diplomatic positions so that they can influence governments directly. It's all strategically, they place their Ninth Circle flunkies in very strategic positions of power. And yeah. Now, Witness D is our police source. He's actually still within Interpol. And he confirms that the Belgian and Italian governments contain closed files that's got lots of evidence about the activities in the Ninth Circle going back to at least the 1930s. Now, he also provided evidence that there was a log. I think I referred to this last time. There's an actual log in Latin contained within the Vatican Library that the prosecutor has obtained a copy of. And it lists all of the Ninth Circle rituals going back to December 1869, including the list of all the participants. And it's one of the other reasons we know that the present Pope took part in these things. In fact, every Pope does take part, but you can't become the head guy unless you have. And he also confirms that Italian governments and courts routinely protect the Church of Rome from criminal investigations and stop police from entering the Vatican to protect these guys. And he says that the Belgian police tried on 4 occasions between 1998 and 2017 to arrest cult participants, but they were stopped by the Belgian royal family, the Vatican cardinals, and the military. And the 5th witness is a source in the Italian government. He confirms that there are secret diplomatic and financial agreements between the Vatican and the world's major powers. And this is to protect the cult activities in whatever country they're operating. Now, this is demonstrated all the time where the church gets government protection. Like blatant example in Canada, where these churches, we prove they murdered over 60,000 children. Not one person's ever gone to jail for it. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And another example of that is recently in America, a Washington state government tried bringing in legislation that would require that the Catholic Church punish priests who harm children, right? In other words, have them included under the law like anybody else. The Trump Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has intervened in the case and blocked that action. And she did so after consulting the Vatican's papal nuncio in America, Cardinal Christophe Pierre of Haiti, who's a close associate of Pope Leo, Prevost. So in other words, remember how Trump blocked the exposure of the Epstein file, the evidence on that? Of course he did, because it's implicating him in all of Epstein's, or at least some of Epstein's connections to the Ninth Circle. And they're bankers, which we're going to get to. Okay. Before the bankers, let me just double check this. Yes. 5th witness, witness F. He's a research scientist with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and he's advisor to the Vatican Bank and the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. According to him, the Vatican Bank is a heavy investor in big pharma, which we knew already. Novartis, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, GSK. But the Vatican Bank has also funded the development of drug-based bioweaponry and nanoparticle implants, which is connected, of course, as we know, to the COVID serum. These implants were created with Vatican-funded researchers in league with the Chinese in their facility at Wuhan. The whole Vatican funding of that thing has been kept in the shadows. But this witness F, one of the Vatican bankers, is confirming that. He states that the Church of Rome routinely provides children to these pharma corporations and the research labs for involuntary drug testing. We knew that already from Canada, but he's confirming that. Some of these children being used as drug guinea pigs are obtained through the cult and its extensive child trafficking network all through the Catholic Church, including with 'Ndrangheta, the European mafia. According to this witness, none of these children who are used in the experiments are ever allowed to survive. And he states that the top executives of these pharma companies are aware of that fact, including how political prisoners in China are used in the drug testing. And to quote him, during 2020 and 2021, I personally briefed Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. I think I sent you his picture. I personally briefed Albert Bourla about our methods of perfecting the COVID serum variants, including the use of children in drug testing. Albert Bourla approved of it, as he did the use of political detainees in Chinese prisons for our drug tests, even when most of them died as a result of the testing. He told me, quote, "whatever is most efficacious," unquote. And there he is. So again, here's the link. Like we knew with the work into exposing genocide in Canada, it always involves big money, the church, the state. It's that genocidal triangle still at work. Looks like a sweetheart, doesn't it? So as part of the close link between the Vatican, Big Pharma, and organized crime, the church is very connected to the illegal drug trade and profits from it immensely. According to this same witness, clergy at every level of the Catholic Church traffic meth, cocaine, and heroin through the church's Mexican, Colombian, Asian drug cartels, and especially the present Pope, Robert Prevost, and his predecessor, Jorge Bergoglio, both of whom were Latin American in a sense. I mean, Prevost was born in America, but he did all his work in Peru. And this witness described a meeting he attended in Rome on March 8th, 2024, called by Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Vatican Secretary of State, acting on behalf of Pope Francis, Jorge Bergoglio. The purpose of the meeting was to expand the Vatican Bank's drug investments in the Western Hemisphere under the camouflage of dummy offshore corporations, including those run by Latin American drug cartels with financing through Deutsche Bank and HSBC. Quote, "This was not unusual. I've attended many such meetings, although usually with less senior prelates. The point is that the church is one of the main actors in the world drug trade and its affiliates, the arms trade and the human slave trade. It's too lucrative for the church not to be involved," unquote. And he describes the close association, why the present Pope was put in effect, was to carry on Bergoglio's Latin American connection because of the whole Chinese factor, because in effect, Prevost helped grease the entry of China into South America to grab a lot of their minerals, as Bergoglio did in North America, as we've talked about, with his deals in getting China into the Canadian resources. And to quote this witness F, "Prevost is often referred to as the second Latin American Pope, and for good reason. He's been connected to Peruvian, Colombian drug lords for many years, and he was a regular guest of Pablo Escobar at his parties. Like Bergoglio, Prevost became the prior general of his Augustinian order because of his ties with military and criminal leaders, and also because he greased China's entry into South America through the ports in his diocese of Chiclayo in northwest Peru and in neighboring Lima. Just follow the money and it always leads to Rome." Now, we've included a link to an NBC News article showing how China has just opened a $1.6 billion port in Peru. And it shows the Peruvian president shaking hands with, what's the Chinese premier's name? Xing Pi or whatever, Xing Li or something. They're, buddy shaking hands. Huge port, the biggest port on the west coast of South America, just opened. So China can funnel a lot of the minerals in that and extend its Road and Belt initiative thanks to Vatican money and the present Pope. Now, this guy is quite the eyewitness because he's provided voluminous evidence, correspondence, minutes of meetings, research data, and agreements between the Vatican, China, Big Pharma, and all the various governments, including the US. And that's all in the docket of evidence that on September 1st, they're going to start exposing as part of the prosecutor's case. Now, onto the bankers. This is where it gets even really more interesting. Witness G, he's the sixth witness. He's an employee of the Vatican Bank. And he was a liaison with the Deutsche Bank, which is one of the chief partners of the Vatican Bank. He has personal knowledge of the murder of two Deutsche Bank officers, Thomas Bowers and Valentin Brockschmidt. And they were killed by the Vatican's covert agency, Santa Alianza, or the Holy Alliance is their name. And I think I've got a picture of a bunch of these guys that I gave you, if we could put that up. This witness said that these two officers of the Deutsche Bank were killed by the Vatican Santa Alianza agency under the direct orders of Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, because both Bowers and Brockschmidt were tied to controversial loans to Donald Trump from Deutsche Bank and its secret Russian and Vatican investors. Now, one of these bankers, this first, when pictures come up, I'll explain who everybody is.
So I've got two emails with pictures. I've got 4 pictures in one email and another picture in the email you sent when I was live. Is there another email I've missed?
No, put up the 4 images. That's fine. We can use those.
So the images are the Pope, the one we've already used at the beginning, the map, and then we've got the survivor image.
It's these images right here. I don't know if you got those. You can see those in what I sent you.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't have that one.
Okay, maybe I'll just zoom in a bit here.
Okay.
This guy on the left is the head of Santa Alianza, Domenico Gianni. He puts the hit out on people. The two Vatican bankers are in the middle, Valentin Brockschmidt and Thomas Bowers, and there's Donny Boy on the end. Now, Brockschmidt, one of the bankers, had provided FBI investigators with hundreds of documents about the connections between Deutsche Bank, the Vatican Bank, and Donald Trump. He was working with the FBI, but then he was found dead in April 2022. The other man, Thomas Bowers, was a close friend of Trump and Epstein, who was also found dead in Malibu on November 19th, 2019, just 2 days before the story of his relationship with Trump and the Vatican Bank loans was about to go public. According to this witness, a Vatican Bank witness, Deutsche Bank has heavily underwritten the criminal operations of the church for many years. It's laundered billions of dollars for the Vatican and its mob associates, and also for Trump International and its Mexican drug cartel partners. Bowers was about to start talking to the feds about what he knew. Subsequently, I learned that Bowers and Brockschmidt had been killed by Santa Alianza assassins as ordered by their director, Domenico Gianni, a man who was personally answerable to Pope Francis and remains the sworn agent of Pope Leo. Now, one thing I should mention about that is on the end there, when we're talking about Trump and the connection to the bankers, the whole thing about Trump International laundering money for the Mexican drug cartels, that's the human connection. And the whole thing about the so-called deportations in America, they're not being deported, they're being trafficked, a lot of these people, into the American private prison industry, which is huge. Pam Bondi, as Attorney General, is a former lobbyist for the private prisons. And they're making billions every year. I've spoken to people in Texas who their friends have been put in jail for 10 years for failure to appear in court. So the Attorney General is lowering the standard by which you can imprison people. You get thrown into prison for nothing these days, including just for being an immigrant, even if you have your papers. So the private prisons can make their money. The amazing thing, Sean, is that we've hit kind of a critical mass and more people are coming forward, most importantly, insiders. And the thing I wanted to close on, and then we can talk, is we got these people to approach various governments in Europe. And if you remember, the reason that Ratzinger stepped down was we had the Spanish government on board, and the Spanish government had contacted Ratzinger saying he could face arrest. We now have 2 other governments who are willing to provide security. So we've learned that Santa Alianza, that the Vatican Assassination Bureau that I mentioned, and Domenico Gianni, the head of it, who killed the bankers, they're tracking us. They're already beginning to did what they tried to do in 2012, 2013, and shut down the court and get rid of witnesses and us. And we have now better security in place. We have guarantees that they're providing security forces that we're going to deputize. And in fact, they will take down Santa Alianza if they try anything against our court. And they've been notified about that. Hopefully that'll provide more protection for more of this to come out, more people to come forward, right?
All right, so just to corroborate a bit of that then. So I've written a book called Pablo Escobar's Story. It's the longest book ever written about Escobar in the English-speaking world. And when I was researching it, there was so much money coming in from the cartels to the Catholic Church that the priests started to change the saints they were devoting the masses to the patron saint of the dealers. And the priests who did that, so much money came into those masses that the other priests saw what was going on, and they started to devote their masses to the patron saints of the dealers. And they would give the dealers little cards of the saints that they said would protect them. And before they went out and did their hits, the hitmen, they'd go to the church, they say the prayers, they get the card, and they think that would, that God had their back. And it was all just one big financial money go around, like you're talking about, Kevin.
It's always been that way, Sean. That's exactly what they did in the Middle Ages. Before they would bombard a village of indigenous people, the priest would bless everyone. They gave everyone the chance to convert. And if you didn't, you get bombarded and destroyed. And they had the patron saint of the ship kind of blessing it all, right? I mean, it's the same murderous activity behind the veil of religion. And that's the point. Like we said, with these cult centers, like that Tomb U beneath the Vatican, it's Roman. It goes back thousands of years. And when they say it's a direct road to hell, I believe that. I think it's some kind of interdimensional portal by which, you see, like one of these scientists mentioned when we were doing the call, the Pfizer pharma guys said, the whole point of the research was to find out, is there a biological basis for the soul? Because if the soul can have a biological or chemical expression, then it can be controlled. And that's the whole point. They want to control and extinguish the soul of the human race and individuals. Now that's, it's all wrapped up, all of this stuff. And part of that is getting people so brainwashed that they're doing murder and thinking it's God's will, which of course is an old religious practice, but you're describing one aspect of it, right?
So another thing I can confirm then, I've written a series of books deconstructing the war on drugs and mass incarceration. And one of the things that Kevin touched upon is the private prison contracts, which are in the tens of billions a year in America now. And they kick down tens of millions a year to both political parties, keep these contracts rolling. But what they need is constant tight laws, huge sentences. So say they put someone away for 10 years for something trivial, they get almost $100,000 a year of taxpayers' money per person. So if you put someone away for 10 years for something trivial, that is $100,000 times 10 handed over of taxpayers' money to the prison industrial complex, which is an offshoot of the military industrial complex. And it's the absolute priority of the government is to keep the money funnel open for the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complexes. So, whether the states are softening on people smoking the green, for example, they have to compensate for that then by tightening laws in other areas to keep the prison population full. Higher sentences, you've got them lobbying for bigger and bigger sentences. You've got the prison guards unions lobbying for free strikes laws, non-violent offenses, 3 strikes, 25 years, people stealing pizzas, getting 25 years to life. It is out of control. It's insane over there.
Well, that's right. And also in England, don't forget, private prisons you got all over England and Europe. It's growth. It's a growth industry, right? In a way, it's a reflection of the whole culture because we're all in a prison, right? They're getting everybody in a prison state of mind, pretty much. And one of the reasons for the quarantining during COVID is that it conditioned people for a couple of years to be used to sitting in your room all by yourself. That way your mind can be controlled. You feel estranged and alienated from more of humanity. And, you know, I noticed in London on September 13th, there's a big rally, both sides of the issue on immigration, right? And it's like watching America, Democrats against Republicans, two groups pitted against each other. Who profits, right? And that's why we say, you know, it's so, the corruption and evil is so sick and so endemic everywhere that we got to get out of the system and create something different. And that's when we're talking about solutions. It's why we had to create the common law courts. You can't operate under the old jurisdiction. You know, it's why I wrote that book. When people say, what do you do about it? You create your own personal, political, spiritual jurisdiction, your own sovereign republics. And as a matter of fact, for folks in England, the Republic of Albion is raising its flag and declaring independence on September 21st at Runnymede, which is where the Magna Carta was signed. I think it's somewhere on the Thames near London. And they're going to raise the flag of the Republic and say, we have no more ties with this criminal power called the Crown. We need our own republic like we did in Canada. And that's one of the things I know people are thinking, what can we do about this horrible evil? You're not going to lobby a politician about this. You know, we got to get out, deflate their system, inflate our own. And that's the only answer to this madness, because, you know, it's just insane the degree to which it's going now, right?
It is insane. And I just want to say we've got almost 3,500 people watching right now across all platforms. Mm-hmm. Kevin's hitting some record numbers here. So it's very important, you know, he comes and spends this time with us on a lot of the Saturdays, that you please check out of his links and his books. And all of those links are in the description box below this video. And the chat is going so fast. I've got one eye on Kevin. I've got one on the chat. I'm going cross-eyed here. I know there's so many questions coming in. I do have a few more questions of my own for Kevin, though, before I hand it over to the viewer questions. And one of those is, what will be the impact of this evidence when the court opens up on September the 1st? How does the court plan to do its work? Have court people, or are you being threatened or attacked?
Well, it's all connected because it's under tight security. We're under protective custody right now. I think you mentioned last time my bodyguard, Yosef, sent out a letter to people and about the need to support us now, because, I mean, every day literally could be our last when you're going up against these powers. So it's one of the reasons we're posting this interim report, what the prosecution has found so far, so it's not lost. And so we have a certain amount of protection. But the reason we had to surface this stuff now is because there's more breaking all the time. When I was, just yesterday, I was notified by the prosecutor's office, we've got 16 new people wanting to come forward with evidence. This is like 26 plus eyewitnesses so far. They only had 32 witnesses at Nuremberg that convicted all these people of crimes against humanity. We had 300 plus in Canada to do our murder by decree book. I expect it to grow exponentially. And as that happens, more people are, including in the system, will be encouraged to come forward. So we think this could be revolutionary. It could split this whole thing wide open. That, of course, is what they're trying to present, and they will do everything possible. Santa Alianza, everybody we've been mentioning who are implicated in this, are going to do everything possible to, they won't just smear and discredit, because that doesn't work anymore. Like, smears after a while just help you because it gets your name around more, right? They will try to eliminate us, absolutely. And so that's why I say everyone listening has a responsibility to act on this. So it isn't just Kevin Annett and his crusade, because it's one of the ways to delegitimate something. You say it's all about one guy, Kevin, right? You know, as if I personally caused Ratzinger to step down, right? You know, it's a lot of people working together, but those of us who are the public figures of this need to be a catalyst to have others come forward. And, you know, now as everyone is waking up to, now is a turning point in the world. We're going to either head towards total corporate slavery or self-governance. And part of that is justice, bringing to trial and locking up forever these child murderers and even more vile things, which we didn't even get into today. Some of the closed evidence that'll be coming out after September. It's beyond belief, and affirms to me the satanic presence in a lot of these things, right? And so anyway, that's more of the same.
So are the British authorities going to allow you entry into this country next month?
We'll see. Some of the people, like, I'm coming to Europe anyway to work with the court. Actually come into Old Blighty. People have said, Kev, you better take a submarine and land off the coast of Cornwall somewhere because they're not going to let you in. But what we want to do is wherever I do come in, we're going to make it totally public and have cameras there and everything. And if they want to lock me up in a prison, fine, let's all go to the prison. And you know, it gives us more exposure. And that's, if they were smart, that isn't what they would do right now. They would set up their own substitute. This is what always happens. They set up their own version to co-opt and contain an issue, like they did in Canada. Now they're saying, oh yeah, we know all about these horrible things that happen to children. And we've apologized and blah, blah. It's redirecting rather than denying. And we can expect that when you start getting effective for the controlled opposition and substitutes to rear their ugly heads. But I'm going to try it. There's no reason why I should be kept out of the country of my ancestors. And I don't intend to be kept out.
So how is your work with the Republic here going?
Republic of Albion, I tell you, the confidence and courage I've met in people. We've been having calls all over Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and England. And people are ready to go. Like they're going down to that big rally in London on September 13th with the message that, look, yes, cultural sovereignty is important. We have to hold on to our identity. You know, the whole issue of immigration that immigrants brought into an area where they don't have any knowledge and everything, inciting racism and hatred and all that. You can hold on to your cultural sovereignty, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of other people. We're trying to find, like we did in Canada, a common ground now, where everyone can be part of a federated republic, where these crimes are not allowed to go on. And the reason why it's important to talk about the royal connection to all this, Charles and Andrew and all these people, is because under law, they're not allowed to rule. They're convicted felons. I don't think you have the term in England, felon, but it's an American term, but a criminal, in effect. You know, convicted criminal. They're not allowed to be sitting there having any kind of political authority. So that creates, like it did in Canada, the need for a new arrangement, the Republic. And make sure that when you vest all power in a few hands, like a king or a pope or head of a CEO, it's inevitable that you're going to get corruption and crime. And, you know, actually the report started with that brilliant quote from Lord Acton in England in 1887 about power corrupting, absolute power corrupting absolutely. He was referring to the Vatican when he said that. The quote is, I cannot accept your belief that we are to judge Pope and King unlike other men, with a favorable presumption that they can do no wrong. If there's any presumption, it is in the other way against holders of power, increasing as the power increases. There is no worse evil than when the office sanctifies the holder of it. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You get one person rule, and like Thomas Paine said in the American Revolution, one man rule is neither just, sane, nor reasonable. You know, and it leads to these crimes. And that's why we've got to, you know, for the sake of our children and to stop these crimes, we need a new sovereign arrangement, legally, politically, in every way, right?
So thank you for the super chat question, Crikey. Are rituals done under the Washington Monument in America?
They're done all over, but that's one spot because, as you know, energetically, it's linked to City of London and St. Peter's Square. So absolutely it is. And we've been concentrating our focus on Europe right now because that's where a lot of the evidence is. But people in America who have that knowledge need to contact our tribunal. And it's, I think you posted that email as well, didn't you, Sean? The way people can contact us.
How will this affect William and Catherine, or are they complicit?
You're not in that position unless you know. You may not participate directly, although to be in any senior position, you do have to participate directly. That's how they know you're safe. And so, of course, they all know, and they'll be held to account. Like you said at the beginning of the show, every human being is answerable under law, not under their own rules and statutes, canon, admiralty, all that, and under the law of nature, their common law, everybody is liable for their actions.
You're getting asked whether you have fear going down this road.
Of course I do. Who doesn't have fear? But it's not a matter of having it or not, it's a matter of what you do with it. And what I've always done with my fear is I think, okay, what's going to happen if I drop out? It's not going to keep me safe, for one thing. And who's safe? We're all going to die, right? Mortality, is looking us in the face all the time. We could die tomorrow of anything. How are you going to spend the next moment, the next day, the next year? That's what I always keep in mind. And I think of those children stretched out on an altar, and I say, how could I stop? I don't view those children any less dear than my own daughters. So you keep going, and you keep going with the help of other people, right?
Tristan wants to know, do you think the Vatican has manipulated society into worshipping the devil?
Well, they don't have to manipulate because we're all raised to think in those terms, right? But yeah, it's insidious. I mean, the Vatican was the basis of, and the so-called Catholic Church was the basis of Western culture. And, when they say God, they mean the devil, the God of the world, and not the God of eternity.
So you're getting asked about people who marry into the royal family. Do they get told before or after they marry into it?
They know before. They're not going to run the risk of bringing a neophyte who then, tries to pull a Princess Diana or whatever. And, think the way people in corporations think, because it's the corporate model. The whole thing, there's a screening process to test out who can be the best functional psychopath, and they rise quickest to the top, right?
And the next question was, you preempted it about Diana. Do you think Diana had to undergo an initiation, or was she unalived because she wouldn't play along with it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
How are Malthusian economics used to harbor economic inequality to affect the public?
I studied Malthus once. I'm trying to remember, and it has to do, kind of social Darwinism. Is that what you mean? I don't want to get into that because I can't comment intelligently on that right now.
Yeah, let's keep the questions on subject, please, for Kevin. And do you think these people are human or something else?
I think they start human, just like we all do. But, as part of the ceremony, it's designed to drive out that humanity. If you can't do that to a child, the things we've been describing, you're done away with immediately in these cults. They don't want to run the risk you're going to talk, right? So, no, it's a matter of continual degradation, right? And, when my first contact with that when I was very young, and I got into the ministry, I was doing prison ministry, and I met serial killers, and they have no qualms. They're like missing that part of the brain. I think they call it the limbic system, where you have empathy, compassion for people. They always feel that they're the ones hard done by. And what's amazing, Sean, in this campaign about genocide by the churches, every time we'd go to a church and try to talk to the church attendees about the crimes that they did to children, they would be angry. They acted like the serial killers, saying, how dare you say this about our church? They had no empathy for the tens of thousands of children who died at their hands. They were just upset we were talking about it. That's how psychopaths act. But you see, when the culture is psychopathic, everybody has to adapt and become a functional psychopath too. And if you're not, you're a problem. And you're like Neo down the chute in the Matrix, right? You've gotten rid of, because you can't upset the group psychosis. And that's what we're in, right?
Is there a connection to the Catholic Church and the transgender movement?
You see, I don't have specific evidence about that, but it all flows naturally, because transgenderism and all that is about the main thrust of genocide is to destroy people's natural identity and create an artificial one. So you want to alienate children, you want to destroy families, you want to make male and female only one of 39 genders. It's designed to confuse people mentally, but get their energy so off that they can be manipulated and destroyed. It's all part of the same agenda when you look at it, and it isn't just the Vatican doing it.
So Nunya, thanks for the super chat. He wants to know about Masonic connections these people have to each other. For example, Trump, Diddy.
You see, Masonry and all that is, again, like we mentioned with the fronts created by the military research, where they say, oh, this is satanic, right? It's a convenient bugaboo, you know, to say they're Freemasons. And in fact, yeah, I mean, it's a cult like a lot of others, but it isn't. It's distraction to get focused on one particular cult and not look at the pattern happening through the entire culture, right?
Was John Paul II also committing SRA?
Well, that's what we've been describing, and and I wouldn't call it abuse. It's a lot more serious than abuse. You know, got to be careful of the language. It's programming you to think it's less than it is.
Susan wants to know, is this global?
Of course.
Okay, Glasgow, what is the proof of all this with all due respect?
Proof. Eyewitness testimonies, corresponding evidence, documentary evidence, and forensic evidence, bones. The three things that we provided in Canada, which proved definitively that genocide happened, so definitive that even the Pope and Prime Minister used the word genocide to describe it. And those are the three elements you need in a court of law: eyewitness testimony, archival documentation to confirm the statements of the eyewitnesses, and forensic proof. It's all there, as you'll see after the court begins in September.
Is it fair to say that religious orphanages were created for nefarious purposes from the beginning?
Yeah. If you believe children are born evil and anything can be used to, quote, save their souls, then any method is justified. But it means brutalizing at a very young age. Rulers have need of that. That's why there's always been a close tie between church and state, because they need the population brutalized so they can be kept in line, right? Function of religion.
Do you believe Robert Picton has any ties to these people?
Well, people may not know who that is, but he was one of the serial, they claim, the Picton family took the fall to a lot of disappearances that happened, mostly against Native women on the west coast of Canada. And we know Robert and Dave Picton and Willie Picton, who died in prison conveniently, were fall guys. They were on the body disposal crew of a much bigger network involving former prime ministers, mayors, Canadian senators, top Catholic archbishops in Canada, cardinals. And I've talked to the undercover guys who went in there and saw this happening for himself. You know, so I mean, it's the same pattern all over. You need a decoy. Right?
How did Epstein become a member of the Trilateral Commission and the Council of Foreign Relations?
Oh, you know, I guess. I don't know. I don't know enough about his history. I just know about recent stuff we've uncovered about his involvement in the Ninth Circle and Trump and all that stuff we've discussed.
Yeah, I believe that Jeffrey was elevated for intelligence purposes through his, his honey trapping, etc. He was, and that network that elevated him would have had him placed in said trilateral commissions and Council of Foreign Relations. So, Lisa, Kevin, so much admiration, but how do you manage to close your eyes at night knowing all you do? I mean, I was about to throw up earlier.
I can sleep at night because I have a clear conscience and I know I'm doing the right thing. That's the main reason you're able to sleep. Now, in terms of the horror of all this, I guess you could say that I've developed a kind of shield, definitely, just to survive the personal loss of losing my kids and all this brutality I went through. In a way, I think it was preparing me for this bigger battle because I'm able to do that. I have strong shields about this, and it's protected me in a lot of other ways too. But the important thing is not even to worry about yourself anymore, but find that higher fixed point around which to revolve, and that is the need for not only stopping these crimes, but creating a new world so that these things don't happen again, and that the life of a child is sacrosanct, which it's not in this present world tyranny.
What do you know about South American children in shipping containers?
Lots, actually, because that was a big study of ours in Vancouver, which is the main port of that. But a lot of that's from Asia, courts. It isn't just South America, but it's one of the standard means in false halls. I actually, when I was a teenager, I learned about this in Vancouver because I was friends with a guy called Tom McGrath, who was in the Seafarers Union. He used to go in on board and help Filipino sailors when they were being kept in chains or not paid properly. And he said, oh yeah, the false bottom boats, he used to point them out. He said, that's how they bring in the people they're trafficking. And everybody knew about it. The police helped unload it. You know, the mayor knew all about it. Like, this stuff is just so endemic to the culture, you know, that it's one of the ways. But don't forget, they don't even need to hide this stuff anymore. It's all out in the open. Because when every level of society is colluding and the rest of us are just going, oh, I don't want to believe that. I've got my own little life to worry about. Why do you need to operate in secret? It's all out in the open. You just don't have eyes to see it. Once you open your eyes, you go, whoa, something better be done now, right?
Goldie wants to know, when do all these rituals take place? How do they have time for all this evil stuff? Well, we showed you a map of one location, Goldie, but there's a lot more places, isn't there, all over the world, Kevin?
Yeah, don't forget, I mean, it isn't just one agency doing this. It's a lot of people freelancing on their own, kind of mimicking this stuff. And you can't predict, but you're not going to do it unless you have some kind of protection. That's why locally you'll often find police, social workers, judges involved in local equivalents of what we're talking about. And yeah, so you got to do your own research. You need education and action and research. Those are the three stools on which we have to base everything. You have to knowledgeably know what you're dealing with.
You got a lot of people asking how they can help you to save the children.
Mm-hmm. Well, write to us, first of all. Angelfire101@protonmail.com is a way to contact me. And our websites, there's more information there, depending where you are. And I got to tell you, Sean, and everybody listening or watching, that these programs are one of the things that activated our court, because a lot of the witnesses coming forward saw these interviews, because you've got such an exposure, right? And so I want to say the power of knowledge, getting it out there. Just start educating people about this and connect with us, and you can start doing follow-up actions, because these court verdicts are enforceable by anybody. You know, you can go in with a group of people, and as Native people do all over Canada, take back the local Catholic Church and say, they're using this place to traffic children out of. They don't have a right to operate. We're taking it over as a community center. Once they start doing that, the enemy is a lot weaker than you realize. You hit their money and public image, and they start panicking. So we have a lot more power than we realize. That problem is they don't exercise it quite often.
Is Kevin familiar with the actual horror history of Medjugorje, Croatia, where church claims appearance of Mary, but the actual history was a mass grave of Serbian kids underneath?
I believe it, because one of the people we work with, he's a professor I met actually in Croatia when I spoke there a number of years ago. And he documented the third largest death camp in Europe in the 1940s was Jasenovac in Croatia. Sponsored directly out of the Vatican by Pope not so pious XII, who set up a Franciscan bishop named Ivan Saric, set up this camp to kill Serbs, because they say they weren't Roman Catholic, they were Orthodox. So they killed about 800,000 Serbs in that one camp. And there are mass graves of Serbian children, especially all over the place. So, these holy sites and that, you're right, they're often used to, no one's going to be digging around on a holy site, just like they don't dig up golf courses. They often put golf courses over the mass grave of Native children in Canada, right? Tourist centers and that, right? So yeah, good point. I'm glad you raised that.
What are your thoughts on Bowers having an outstanding complaint in 2018 of breach of fiduciary duty, which may have been putting pressure on him?
Yeah, I will, frankly, if you have any information on that, send it to us, because we need more information on Bowers. You're getting conflicting accounts. What we do know is he had his finger on a lot of secrets involving Deutsche Bank and Trump.
How can we ever begin to erase all the evil in this world we're in? Well, highlighting it is a start.
And don't let evil take hold in your own heart and life, because we're all expected to be compliant in some way and be indifferent. And once you know what has to be done, then you just act on it, and you'll help cleanse that.
Is the Pope the devil in human form?
I believe, like my ancestors did, that Rome represents Antichrist. That is the opposite to Christ. It's the biggest deception in human history. I don't think like individuals, when they sit on that throne, embody that, yes, but it's not about individuals, it's about the entity behind it and the corporate entity it represents, right? So this is our focus all along, has been on the institutions and the systems behind them, because that's where you find the real evil. And it can, it's like in possession. It takes possession of individuals, but there's no point of, and the system always gets us to be angry and hate individuals as if they're the problem. No, they're the embodiment of the problem, right? But they can, once they're used, they're disposed of, right?
Thank you for the super chat, Chris. And the question from Tracy: do you think they will orchestrate an alien invasion attack in order to prevent all this coming out?
Yeah, we've heard about that and using like all that imagery and that. The point is, it's like if people are dumb enough to believe these things, and yeah, they can be fooled by any image. But once you're armed with knowledge of what you're dealing with, then all of those games don't mean anything. You can see through it all. Right?
Nita has just bought your book through the links in the description box. Thank you, Nita.
This one's our best-selling book now. We've sold over 1,200 of these thanks to all of you guys. So thank you. That tells you the problem, the nature of the beast in Rome.
And all of Kevin's links and contact are in the description box. If you've got any questions, get them in now, because Kevin has gone through them very rapidly. Let me see. Kevin's view on the Fatima Sanctuarium and the apparitions. Was it a hoax?
But of course, religion is a hoax. And they get more desperate. That's the point. It's like, we found this in the campaign when we were first bringing out the crimes of the churches in Canada. Right after that, the church began a big media campaign about how they're going bankrupt, and all these distractions. And it's like, it's all designed to get people to not look at the evidence. Like you're taught in law school. If the evidence is against your case, you attack the witness, like they always do me online, right? Attack the witness. Don't believe this guy. That's not the issue. The issue is the evidence, the hard evidence. And that's what we try to bring people back to all the time. What does it tell you? What conclusions do you have to draw based on what we know?
Is this the most evil time in Earth's history? I think because of technology, a lot of people can be affected by evil more so, perhaps.
I don't think the evil ever changes its nature. It embodies, the nature of what we're dealing with. But you're right, the technology allows it to be far more effective. We're undergoing a period now of a revival of kind of neo-fascism all over the planet, right? And the hatred and the whole corporate thinking. We're free. Do you remember, I don't know, when I was growing up, there was so much more variation in what people were able and willing to say publicly. They weren't afraid, and now it's so shrunk down to like censored fear everywhere, It's like, I don't know, you think people would be sick of this, want to throw it off and just start again. And that's what we're hoping to encourage in people. Just get out in nature, folks, with animals and children, and start living again. Be human beings, That's your best assurance is that.
Indeed, too much Orwellian doublespeak. Yeah. Why is this only coming out now and not years ago?
It did come out years ago. We've known about these things for many years, but it's achieved a new platform. And like I say, the details put forward by the witnesses that I talked about today, that's been recent because of this exposure we've gotten through Sean's show, but also we reach a critical mass. It's the law of nature. Enough quantitative changes eventually creates qualitative change. And boom, suddenly there's a whole new reality here. And we have to ride this wave, because that's when things really change and when you can shut down these horrendous things,
And don't forget, when I was growing up, all we had was BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV here in the UK, completely controlled mainstream media. There was no alternative media. So now, there's more information flow. So CC wants to know, are all people in high levels of government corrupt?
People's personalities are one thing, but when they're in government or in a corporate system, yes, they're all part of a corruption that they have to cooperate in, or they're not going to get their paycheck. So objectively, yes, they are part of that corruption. They can leave it and recover their humanity, but how many people are willing to do that? until they have to.
Thank you for the super chat, College Initiatives. Thanks for this information. We had David Icke on last week, and he was talking about a dystopia through AI. And Stephanie's wondering, what do you think about AI evolving and if it could remove elites?
Well, they created AI for their own purposes, so how could they use it? We use it that to remove them. Like, it's the old argument all the time about using the system to overthrow the system, and you can't. You've got to create it on a human terms. The last thing we need on this stuff is AI, because you can't tell the difference between reality and fabrication. And we have to, there was one of the philosophers who created the American Revolution, Thomas Reid. He was what's called a philosophical realist, a Scottish principle of, you can know reality on the basis of what you observe and your own common sense. You don't need some abstract forces that you can't see somehow influencing you. No, common sense is common law. And that says that we know what's going on. Our experience and our senses don't lie to us. We can act on that basis. So let's get back to that and not rely on artificial anything. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. The elites are all competing right now to be at the forefront of AI. But perhaps Stephanie's referring to Frankenstein's monster turning upon Dr. Frankenstein. Do you think that's a possibility, Kevin?
It's happening. As a matter of fact, we talk about this a lot in Canada, that this monster we created to conquer other people is now turning on us and eating us and consuming us. And we think it's unfair because we're not supposed to be the ones who get destroyed. It's only other people who are. But now that it's doing that to us, we can look at what we've been part of and get out of it and say, no, we don't want this kind of system, technocratic genocide anymore.
Indeed. Geopolitics. Is a country like the Netherlands doomed?
Well, the nation state is a redundancy now. We're in a corporatocracy, and we have to recover that. You can, not the nation state, but going back to our cultural origins, we're seeing that devolution happening, right? Just as everything's getting centralized, it's kind of like when the Church of Rome was formed under Constantine. Just as everything was getting concentrated in Rome, you saw all over the empire monastic communities setting up, like the Egyptian Desert Fathers, and that people saying, no, we don't want any of this. We want to go back to the basic teachings of Christ and live simply. And according to that, you always see those opposite tendencies. And we've seen that in the world. You've seen, like the folks in England who are forming the Republic, they're all talking about creating self-sufficient land-based communities, local assemblies, pass our own laws, get away from this, government that doesn't even operate anyway. Half the laws in England are passed by the European Parliament, right? So we got to decentralize all the time and put power back in the hands of the people, right?
Right. Looks like you've answered most of the questions, Kevin. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers?
Well, just that September 1st is when that starts. That's when I'm going to be in Europe, and we can do all sorts of fun things there. We plan on doing that. But I would say get involved with this, learn more, and this link is going to be up on our website soon, and get the report all over the place. We're doing a media release tomorrow, and we're going to be posting this interview on the release. And just have everyone watch this and write to us, get involved wherever you are. We can send you a lot more information and context about how to do that and how to save the lives of children in your community.
My friend, the stakes are getting higher. You be sure to take care of yourself. And we salute you for your bravery, Kevin. I'm going to let you go and close the show. But thank you for coming on, man. That was mind-blowing.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for everything. And thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care. Cheers. And don't forget, everybody, please support Kevin at his links. They are all in the description box. If you want to email him, you can reach out. I know questions kept coming in, including that final super chat question there from Crows. Thank you for that. Kevin's email is in the description box if you guys want to write to him. And if you didn't see my video with John Sweeney, who is Glenn Maxwell, this video will take you over to that one next. We've got Ari Ben Menashe Part 2 coming up next week. We've got Anya Wick Part 2 in the making. We have got Juliet Bryant and Audra coming on. Part 2s for Audra, both Epstein survivors. Tons more phenomenal content coming out. Wherever you are in the world, take care, folks. Much love and respect, and take care of the kids. And thank you for all of your brilliant questions as usual. development on the Pope Leo case. And because you guys have been such fantastic supporters of his work, so many of us have supported him at his links, which are all in the description box, and have got the book as well, which helps sponsors his work. He's chose our platform to be the first to announce these developments. So we are honored that you've come on and that you're going to say these things, Kevin. But viewer discretion is advised due to the nature of the grisly stuff that Kevin describes. So what is what's happened now, Kevin?
Well, the court began yesterday, as we talked about, September 1st. This is the International Criminal Court of Justice. And originally it was to be set up in Western Europe only. But in fact, because of developments in America, it's meeting in two locations, in the Midwest of America and in Western Europe. I don't want to say where. The notice that we just put up at murderbydecree.com under ITCCS updates gives us a summary. Let me just kind of touch on the main points of that. First of all, that there's four main defendants. There's Pope Leo, Robert Prevost, Charles Windsor, the King of England, US President Donald Trump, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Now, that's a recent development. Just last week, this is so relevant because in the news, of course, he's the guy who's trying to unite NATO to take on Russia, send more troops to the Ukraine. So this has tremendous geopolitical repercussions. Mark Rutte was identified on two occasions as being at Ninth Circle ceremonies. Now, we knew before that he had done things like cover up the Marc Dutroux case, where there was Belgian and Dutch royals seen at these child sacrificial ceremonies and other things. But survivors and one of our insiders came forward and confirmed with even more evidence that, yes, he was involved in these rituals, and he's a former president of the Netherlands, and one of his assistants was as well. So he's going to be named as kind of a secondary defendant. So again, this is like showing how it's not just a cult within the Catholic Church. It takes in a much broader range of people, as we've talked about, political leaders and others. And so there's, besides those four, there's 9 others who are going to be so 13 defendants in all. And there's 5 presiding magistrates. 2 of them are in America, 3 are in Europe. And we also had to set up the court that way for security reasons. The reasons they're meeting in the Midwest as well is because that's Robert Prevost's home ground in Illinois and Ohio. And get this, there's evidence now, strong evidence, that there's a whole child sacrificial cult operating right within Ohio, next door to Chicago, where he's from. We mentioned last time that Robert Prevost was associated with several people who have already been indicted for child trafficking. A priest called William Auth, who has for many years been bringing children up from Guatemala, trafficking them through the Catholic Church. Now there's evidence that quite astounding that, in fact, researchers in Ohio have found evidence of mass graves connected in the Ninth Circle. This is in not only Cleveland, which is in the southern, Cincinnati in the southern part of Ohio, but in the north, Cleveland, which is right on, if you get a map out, Cleveland is right on Lake Erie, right across from southern Ontario. And in the course of our work over the number of years, we found evidence of graves along the southern shore of Ontario, right across the lake from Cleveland. All of these pieces of the puzzle are coming together now, and they're leading, again, back to Prevost, which is where he got his, if you remember from our last interview, he was ordained in Rome in 1978, took part in the Ninth Circle ceremony. So again, this is the link back to the Midwestern part of America. That's, another piece of evidence that now the special prosecutor has been spending today and yesterday laying this all out to the magistrates. They are then going to approve who are the defendants, and then summonses are going to be issued to these people. Now, the really unique thing about this trial, it isn't just in a typical trial, you need, with due process, there's an assumption of innocence before guilt, and the prosecution has to prove the guilt. In fact, the basis of the court is standing on the Nuremberg precedents. And at Nuremberg, they were trying what's called a group crime. So in other words, it wasn't just a bunch of sick individuals running around killing people. It was a whole system of state-level genocide aimed at particular groups. That's what we're dealing with. And so, in effect, this court has been convened as a special tribunal with the power to say, look, they're already members of convicted criminal organizations. They are guilty until proven innocent. So it's a reverse. When you're dealing with group crime, you have to assume, like every guard at Auschwitz, every typical Nazi official was implicated no matter what they did. You didn't have to prove the individual guilt. They were collectively guilty. And that's what we're dealing with here. A system even big, we're older and bigger than the Nazis. The Roman Catholic Church and the Ninth Circle cult is a group crime, transnational criminal organization. So these defendants are going to have to prove their innocence, because the assumption is they could be arrested now because they're part of this criminal association. That also gives the court as a tribunal the right to immediately order arrest warrants against these individuals. But more than that, seize their property and assets. The entire community are empowered to help enforce these things. And another really important thing is that, especially with the involvement of Mark Rutte, other governments have an interest in this court case. So we do have people from governments that we're not going to mention at this point that are going to be present at the European court as observers, because obviously they can make hay out of this if the head of NATO is implicated as involved in his grisly, sacrificial rituals with children. And the evidence is pretty firm. Eyewitnesses, documentation, even photographs of these things going on. And that's, it's all billowing out now this week, now that the court, the magistrates have received this evidence, and the summonses will be issued very soon, within a few days.
So, some of the characters you mentioned, they've also been tied in to this network with Epstein, and there's been so much news on that since we last spoke, Kevin. Yeah. We had the leak of the emails, the Ehud Barak emails, showing that Prince Andrew was in contact with Epstein long after he'd said he'd stayed in contact with him. We've got the Epstein story just burning the whole Trump house down right now. So many people have turned against him. Some huge YouTubers who were supporting him, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, etc., because it just seems like utter theater. They're pretending to release us information, but it's all pantomime. And now, you've brought those names up this evening: Epstein, Trump, and a lot of pertinent questions have already come in from the viewers. And you mentioned Ohio earlier, didn't you?
Yes. You see, Illinois, Chicago, where Pope Leo is from, right next door to Ohio, it's been a hotbed of the satanic activity for a long time. And we had a group investigate the Cincinnati Diocese of the Catholic Church. And there was massive money laundering going on there. Normally, when you follow the money, there's other crimes associated, like human trafficking, drug trafficking, that. Sure enough, to give you an example, and I can't mention the details, but we had people in Southern Ontario who said there's an area along the coast there, near a place called Port Burwell, and you can look it up on the map. It's an isolated community, and it's closed in. You can't get in there. If you try driving up the road, you're suddenly accosted by uniformed official private security, but you can't get into the area. One of our sources went down there hiking because he's from the area. They found a refrigerator filled with human skeletons right on the beach. And he said he drove away. About an hour later, 8 Ontario Provincial Police vehicles with their lights going sped down to the beach and cleaned out the area. Then they locked off the area. Now, that's right across the lake from Cleveland, right? And body dumping, human trafficking, all of that. And it's got the Ninth Circle written all over it. So you can't underestimate the impact once we get this information out. It affects everyone and everything. And, no wonder Trump buried the Epstein file, because it leads directly to his door, as we talked about last time.
So Izzy wants to know whether Leslie Wexner has anything to do with the operations in Ohio. So Wexner, he's the one that the CIA, they relocated the airlines to Ohio, the airlines that were, sending weapons south and bringing the white powder back up. And he did that with Epstein, and that was the crossover in Ohio. So what Wexner was quite prominent in Ohio. So are you aware of Wexner and his activities?
I'm not, I haven't been privy to that information. Quite possibly that could be in the evidence that the judges are examining. You see, that's why 2 of the 5 judges are Americans, and they specifically are located in the Midwest to gather this information, because when you find an opening and you open it a bit, it leads all over the place. And so that seems to be one of the weak links in the whole Ninth Circle thing, is right there in Ohio.
Kat is asking whether they're using military bases in these states to do these transportation and these evil deeds.
Invariably, because don't forget, for many years, the Ninth Circle, and this is kind of the broader point the court's trying to bring out, the Ninth Circle isn't an isolated satanic religious cult. It's integrated with the defense system, the government, big money, not just the churches. The churches are necessary as a front for all of these things, right? And because they have very mind-controlled populations who are able to help cover up these things and think it's the work of God, right? So, yeah, military has been at the center of this for decades. Don't forget, for 75 years, there's been mind control experiments going on right after World War II to electronically, manipulate and control human thinking and consciousness and all that stuff. Children are necessary guinea pigs in this, because they have, there's something about the innocence of a child in their brain development where they're easier to experiment on and control and program. And, a lot of people have researched and written about this. But yeah, it all invariably leads back to military bases. We found that all over Canada. The Indian hospitals are always located on Canadian military bases.
And if they're transporting people or substances through military bases,
Mm-hmm.
then they're not getting checked, are they? As if they were going around on public transport. Do you remember during the Vietnam War, they were bringing substances inside corpses, weren't they? They were smuggling inside soldiers' corpses, bringing them back to America.
Yeah, there was in that movie with Denzel Washington about Frank Lucas, the Harlem drug lord, American something or other the movie is. But yeah, like it's been the practice consistently to use, because like with the church, they're the last place people are going to suspect, right? And they have the infrastructure and the power to do it.
Yeah, the American Gangster, I think it was called, and I think Diddy's dad died. He was in the mix with those guys, and he died, got killed. All right, so the next question is, regarding this legal action, then Donald wants to know whether the judges are being checked for their connections.
Yeah, I actually know all 5 of them. 2 of them had been involved in the first case against Ratzinger. The other 3 have been thoroughly checked. One of the ways you can tell the credibility of people is if they've gone through the ringer themselves. Every one of them was either disbarred or thrown off the bench. One of our early advisors was a Spanish judge called Baltasar Garzon, who was tossed off the bench in Spain because he went after the Catholic Church about their trafficking of children, making them millions of dollars during the Franco dictatorship. And so, like me, you gotta find the people who've been booted out of the system. That's the first test to see, like they, are more credible. But for other reasons too, and the sign of that is the fact that they haven't bailed and that they haven't turned. And usually when somebody is sent in to disrupt, they do that very quickly. They'll do everything to divide and conquer before it gets off the ground. But this is off the ground now. So, I mean, it's in a way started a momentum that's hard to stop, right?
So Sugar wants to know whether the current Pope was just in Ninth Circle rituals during his ascension, or whether that is an ongoing practice.
It varies. I mean, you have to get in, you have to be inducted. And once you're in, you can't just go away. You're part of it. It's like there's no former CIA people, right? They're controlled to some degree. And don't forget as well that they need the credibility of Rome to protect the Ninth Circle. So these guys, yes, we found with Ratzinger, he was routinely involved in these things. And the same with Prevost. And of course, he was doing it in South America as well. There was one of the secondary witnesses described how he would go off into the mountains of Peru on so-called church, kind of retreats. And they said a lot of the local native children would go up there and disappear and never come out again. he was being invited by Pablo Escobar over at Colombia to all his parties. And, it's like, the guy is dirty. That's why you have to, how beneficent he looks, like Francis. He's always the nice guys with the smiling faces. Those are the ones you got to watch, right?
Mm-hmm. So Tracy is saying, Kevin, will this news ever hit the headlines for the world to know the horrendous truth?
I would think that the only way it would really hit it is if there was somebody within the system who had an interest in wanting it to come out. And in this case, for example, we made a concerted effort to aim at Al Jazeera and the Russian media, because they're no friends of NATO. And we know that if we can get into the Russian TV and everything, that'll be another wedge. And invariably that'll happen. We found in this similar previous cases, you see, the way the system contains this stuff, they don't deny it or suppress it that looks too obvious. They wait. Hopefully people don't want to listen to it, and they hope it'll fade away. But if it doesn't, they put in their own false narrative. And, like they did in Canada, saying, yes, some children were harmed, but now we're apologizing, here's money, and we're healing and reconciling. It puts everybody back to sleep. If it gets serious enough, something like that'll happen. And they might even force him out or bring in a new guy, blaming health reasons, the usual standard lies they do, right? But it doesn't change the effect this has. And the main thing is the power of this court now, unlike the previous one, they have the right to immediately detain these people. And they're assumed to be guilty, don't forget, because they're part of a criminal network. And so that makes it all the more important for people to take action on the ground. And one of the things the court is doing, issuing universal arrest warrants, deputizing police and military, including from some of these other countries who haven't committed yet, but they are interested in helping to shut these things down and gain political mileage from it, right? The court is training action groups, training people how to go in and seize Catholic Church properties peacefully. Under international law, they don't have the right to their assets and property. They're already a TNCO, a transnational criminal organization. So, all of that is, in other words, it's kind of an activist court. It isn't just, okay, here's another verdict. Here's another piece of legal information. No, it's meant to stop this cult once and for all, if that's at all possible, right?
And isn't it the case that the news is completely controlled, the mainstream news, by just a handful of corporations? And even people like us, when we're exposing these things, it's an absolute minefield where they'll just wipe us out as well. So it's really hard to break something like this that's linked to the network, to expect that the network controlled news is going to report on it.
No, they won't, but they don't matter. I mean, ultimately, it's kind of like, officially, Lee Harvey Oswald was the same lone gunman, right? Everyone knows that's impossible. But so the popular awareness is much further along than any of that. And it doesn't really matter ultimately. I remember doing a study when I was a minister. There's a thing called the Albion Institute. And they found that even with all the technology in that, over 90% of people came to church from word of mouth because they were invited by somebody. And that is true anywhere. It's the personal contact that changes things. So thousands of people after this show will be talking about this. It's why in May, when we did our first interview, my sales went from 50 books a month to 1,200. Just boom, everybody wanted to read about it. And multiply that many times. And of course it's going to change things, but we can't be fixated on the so-called system, because of course everyone knows now people are a lot more sophisticated now because of their experiences of this stuff. So I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that this is going to rock the Tower of Babel even more in a big way, right?
So you've got a lot of people asking about, your reference to Trump earlier. What is the role of the White House in all of this and Trump?
Well, I mean, the initial evidence came from two of the witnesses from Europe, who, as well, a young girl and in her teens, and then as an older woman, were both present on two different occasions. When one of the occasions was when Trump was at Epstein's Manhattan apartment in the spring of 1999, where, according to the posting, again, if you go to that earlier posting on our website, the Interim, and I mean, like, in a way, it's not even about him, because when you're operating at that level of wealth and power, everybody knows about it and is implicitly involved in this whole network. And I had experience of that, you know, as a teenager in Vancouver, where friends of our family were members of the Vancouver Club. And they would routinely joke about the children brought in from the Indian reservations. And one of them said, yeah, we pass children around like a fine bottle of wine, and there's nothing anyone can do about it because it has all the judges and politicians involved. Like they're all. So, I mean, this is the norm. That's the thing to understand, which makes it all the more important to look beyond simply the case of individuals and what has bred this and how can we stop this, right?
Yeah, so a lot of people, you know, still support Trump, and some people in the chat are saying that Trump has said he's taking on the cabal, he's taking on the deep state, he's going to end the human transportation. Do you just think that that's designed by PR people to harness those disgruntled people's votes?
Absolutely. Any politician, any priest who's sophisticated says what people want to hear. And don't forget the whole thing. One of the reasons it's difficult to navigate the whole issue of child trafficking and all this stuff is because every political faction uses it as ammunition against somebody. If you want to destroy somebody's credibility, just say he sleeps with kids, right? It's one of the main ways to bring somebody down. So you got, and it's you know, when people who are quoting Trump and, you know, the deep state advocates all the time and everything, they're always, you know, all the people are blamed as being involved with children. They all tend to be liberal, politically liberal. You never hear them mentioning their own people as doing this. It's always, you know, the Democrats or the liberals in Hollywood or anybody. They're always the enemy. So that has a partisan ring to it that clearly is ideological. We're cutting through all that. We're not taking political sides. Our common ground, and it has been from the very beginning for almost 30 years, we're politically independent. We go after anybody who's harming children. And that should be a common ground for people to come out of these false divisions that they create so that these crimes can go on. Right?
You're getting asked if Trump, you know, why did they try to take Trump out 3 times if he's in the network?
You mean
the reference to the assassination attempts.
I mean, you've got to be a very good shot to just nick somebody's ear. It doesn't happen because of a kid who then conveniently dies. I mean, you know, when people, what I don't understand, Sean, is people are very aware, but then when it comes to certain father figures or saviors who they hang on to, it's like talking to a Catholic about the Pope. He's infallible. He can do no wrong. Anyone who criticizes him is part of the deep state. You know, it's like this brainwashed thinking, cult thinking, really, because any cult involves a leader figure, you know, a Hitler, a Stalin, a Trump, whoever, who cannot be criticized, or a pope who's beyond criticism, beyond, and people like that are perfectly situated due to crime, because if you're wearing a white robe all the time, or you're infallible, you can do anything and get away with it, as he has done, as a lot of these people have done. So we got to free our minds from dependency on these so-called rulers and start thinking and acting for ourselves. And that's the kind of golden lining in this whole process. It's helping people do that and reclaim their minds. That's why I wrote that book, Governing Ourselves. We got to govern our minds first before we can do this independently, right?
There's a lot of news stories about Trump being ill right now, and photos of him with swollen hands and ankles, etc. Do you think they're trying to do away with him?
No, I think he will. When the heat comes down too much, they'll use the health problems excuse for him to not be involved, because that's what you always do. You check out any of these people who've ever been implicated. They always resign for health reasons. I mean, that's just kind of a standard boilerplate you use to get the person off the hook so he doesn't implicate other people. And so, yeah, that could happen. I mean, the guy's almost 80, you know. People die, right?
So you sent me a photo of a guy pulling a face. Let me get this one on the screen and see if we can get
Rota.
What's the story on this guy then?
Mark. Okay, so this is the head of NATO. He's the guy who's rattling his saber at Russia right now. Mark Rutte was the president of the Netherlands for 10 years. Before that, he was a politician in Holland. But early on, when I first interviewed Toos Nijenhuis in around 2010, his name came up right away. Numerous other eyewitnesses who we have on file described him being in Ninth Circle ceremonies and covering up for Belgian and Dutch royals who were at these things. He was, there was a man, Laurent Louis. He was a member of the European Parliament. he mentioned Mark Rutte and a guy called Elio Di Lupo, who was the premier of Holland. The two of them were both seen at these human hunting parties. There's a picture of, in the same thing I sent you, a Toos Nienhuis in the field south of Brussels, pointed where the human hunting party happened, and where she saw children incinerated as part of these ninth circle ceremonies. Yeah, that's the south of Brussels. She said this forest was ringed by Belgian troops. Nobody could get in or out. She and her daughter Carmen were taken there because they were, they treat some members of the cult like mascots, and they bring them around, with them to be used later, in other ways, blackmail politicians and that. But anyway, she said it happened right there. She's pointing to where the incineration happened. But the children were chased through these woods. Mark Rutte was present. There's other descriptions of them then cutting off parts of the dead children's bodies and mounting it like penises of boys of the ones they've killed and mounting them on a plaque. And it's in their meeting house in one of these castles in Belgium. They have all these sex organs, displayed on the wall. I mean, it's like very sick. And again, he came up time and again. So, the very fact that he's so strategically placed right now, I don't think that's accidental either, because again, this is part of an international network, and the purpose, of course, is to destroy human innocence. And also, when you put somebody like this in that position, they have to prove the right stuff. They have to prove they can do these things, because then they can be controlled very effectively. And I don't know what that gesture represents. It's kind of strange, but that's part of what is being introduced now about Rutte and his role in this.
Have you heard of Annika Lucas? She was transported to elites from that side of the world, and she when she was 5 years old, I think, and she's got a lot to say. Anyway, she's coming over, and I'm going to be staying at my house, and we're going to do a live stream about some of that stuff. So next question is from Faye. Was Prevost subpoenaed?
Well, the subpoenas are coming out this week. Yesterday and today, and probably tomorrow, because there's so much of it. The special prosecutor is presenting all the evidence that he and I and some other people put together based on all this voluminous evidence we had before and recent stuff that's come in. When the judges do that, they're going to decide who gets subpoenaed. There's probably 13 defendants, and the subpoenas will go out right immediately. Now, to be served, don't forget, ideally, the best is to hand it to the person directly. These people are so insulated that's quite unlikely. But all you have to do, and people should know this, you hold up on a broadcast like this, you hold up the summons, the subpoena, and you say, Mark Rutte, you are hereby summoned to appear on this date and place. So sometimes all you have to do is post it on a place they've been, like their workplace or a house, and take a picture of it. They've been served. So it's under common law, it's a pretty straightforward process. You have to publicly notify they have to appear. If they don't, they're not contesting what's being said about them, and an arrest warrant can be issued. A verdict of guilty can be instantly put into the court. Right.
So I know you got a few things to say about this guy as well. Let me get him on the screen. King Charles.
Yes, well, you're in the royals anywhere in Western Europe, and you're part of this. We've talked before about his role in issuing the kill order against William Coombs, who saw Queen Elizabeth and Philip take those children from the Kamloops death camp in British Columbia. But he was also involved in there's so much on this guy. I mean, his involvement with Rio Tinto diamond mines, the killing of 10 Cree Indians in 2022 to get control of those diamonds in central Saskatchewan. The royal family, British royal family, has increased its personal wealth 50 times after Elizabeth came in the 1950s because of their investments in uranium mining all over the world, right? And a lot of people stand in the way of that mining. So this guy routinely and his family are involved in killing Indigenous people all over the place to get the land. That's one piece of it. He was personally present as well at these Ninth Circle rituals. Toos Nienhuis saw him at Carnarvon Castle in Wales. And recently, the reason Andrew is mentioned as well, because he and Andrew were routinely present at these Epstein parties as well. They don't mention Charles, of course, but Andrew could be just the fish they're thrown to the crowd, right? Like the one they can sacrifice, like they did Diana or any of the others, but they got to protect the guy, the head of the CEO, right?
Yeah, we just did an hour on Diana before you came on, Kevin. If the viewers have missed that one, check it out. And we also had Andrew Loney on a couple of times in recent weeks. He's got this book out about Andrew. And like you said, they've increased their wealth so much, but the scams and the schemes that Prince Andrew and Fergie get up to, that Andrew Loney exposes. I mean, how much money do these people need to get? All this money, power, fame, but they cannot stop themselves from just conning people, hustling, trying to get one over, just trying to keep increasing this wealth at the expense of normal people. Is it just some kind of mental illness?
Well, it is, of course, but I mean, people in that position really believe they're gods, and they can do whatever they want to anyone, and in fact, they can under their law. But the point is, they're also very afraid, because there's elements of humanity still in them, and there's fear that their own people will betray them as well, right? So I mean, it's that level of absolute terror, and don't forget, I mean, remember in Winston Churchill's biography, he described how he was flogged at whatever school he went to, right? Harrow or Eton or whatever it was. And I mean, his dad was in the cabinet, and yet it's part of the brutalization of these ruling class types that at a very young age, they get so brutalized that they're dissociated from their own feelings. And that's why you're not dealing with people who own themselves. And that's our great advantage over them, because we do. And we can act on conscience. We can act and not be afraid, right? So we have a great advantage over these monsters, right?
So we've got almost 2,000 people watching live. I just want to remind everybody, Kevin's put his life on the line. He's had numerous attempts on himself, poisonings, etc. So it's very important that we support him at his links. If you're watching on YouTube, all of his links and his email is down there in the description box below this video. You can get his books and you can watch his other stuff. And if you've got any questions, we are live. So please get your questions in the chat now while we are live. So Agent Orange wants to know about the link between the Vatican and Saudi Arabia.
I haven't really looked into that particular link, but I mean, it's, there's different theories that Islam was created by the Vatican as a convenient enemy to justify its just wars and everything. Very similar holy war ideology, of course. And, so, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to answer something I don't know very much about, but there's definitely that link. And again, you're dealing with the same mentality, just like the corporate system, was created by the Vatican, Catholic Church, right? Corporatism.
So Izzy wants to know, is it better to buy your books on Amazon or through your website?
All the books I have and other people have been bought up. The only place you can go, unfortunately, is Amazon. And when we get more support, we'll find other distributors in that, especially now since my books are in 5 different languages, including Chinese. We just had the work on genocide in Canada. It's circulating all over China now. And, yeah, you can write to me, but it's better for now just to get it through Amazon. And especially if anyone in America is watching this, well, I know you are, but if you're in the Midwest, especially anywhere in the Ohio, Illinois region, please contact us, because there's people doing work on the ground now. Like I say, they've got evidence of mass graves along the Lake Erie shore in Ohio. And so we need more people to come forward, any police, anyone who knows anything about that.
So you've got a question here. Why don't you talk about Prince Edward, who is the highest ranked Freemason in the world?
Maybe they will. They need the evidence, right? We don't exclude anybody. If you have evidence about that, contact the court. And I don't know if I put the email of the court in there, itccsoffice@protonmail.com. I'm not sure if it's up there, Sean, but
you got your hidden from history1@gmail.com email.
That's me.
Yeah.
And then the court, itccsoffice@protonmail.com. That's the place for people to send any evidence you have about Edward or anybody.
So Sacred Heart, how is the best way for the rest of us to get directly involved in helping, other than providing financial aid? Is there something we can be doing now?
Absolutely. We have flyers you can start handing out at your local Catholic church. That's a very important weapon, because as soon as one of these priests, who all know about these things, as soon as they see one of our flyers, we know this because one of their lawyers told me this, they're notified that if my name or the campaign's name comes up, the people are not to have anything to do with it, and if they are, they're expelled, they're excommunicated on the spot. They're that touchy because they know that, you know, somebody in the pews could come forward and say, yeah, I know about this priest, you know. So getting that information into the pews and telling the Catholic churchgoers, you're aiding and abetting a criminal organization. Do not put money in the collection plate. And that has them worried when people stop donating. So there's lots you can do. You can write to me or the court. We'll send you these flyers, start getting them around. Other people will come forward. Other survivors will hear about this. You got to have a grassroots approach and get out there and have a public presence in the community. You can then heighten that up, holding rallies. I mean, we've done this all over the place. We can help you, you know, initiate that. That's what I do most of the time, do those kind of organizing on the grounds with people. But I wouldn't dismiss financial aid because, again, you know, the people in Europe do have backers. I did, but when, you know, these people tend to come and go, the funders. So donations are very important in terms of funding my travel. So if you can, write to me, please, and we can arrange how to receive donations.
Yes, there's almost 2,000 watching, so please get those likes up. Crikey is saying, and Penny is saying, what are the Clintons' role in this network?
Again, I don't know much. I mean, you know, it depends what evidence you believe or prefer to believe. I assume anyone in the position of power is involved. And there's certainly a lot of evidence about the Clintons and, you know, the people they ordered knocked off and all that. That hasn't been our focus. But again, we're not politically partisan in any way because we recognize this crosses all the party lines, right?
Yeah, and I've written a book, Clinton, Bush, and CIA Conspiracy, so I've done a lot of exposure on them.
Well, then you should answer the question.
Oh well, it's your evening. I'll do that on a separate monologue.
Yeah, cool.
So Gay wants to know, what does Kevin know about Cardinal George Pell?
That was when they forced him out in Australia. It's because it was part of the faction fight between the Ratzinger people, who Pell was with, and Bergoglio, Pope Francis, who was coming in. And we exploited that because the Spanish ambassador who wrote to Ratzinger and said he could face arrest, and that's what forced him out after we gave Spain our evidence. The same thing happened. Bergoglio wanted Pell out because he wasn't playing ball, and so they didn't create. There was all these evidence implicating him with, you know, concealing child trafficking, which he has to do under crimen solicitatis. You must not tell the police. So it's again a group crime. They just threw him out because he served the Bergoglio faction. To have him out and put their own guy in. That's the only reason people ever fall, because one faction gets rid of them, not because, hey, suddenly the church has developed a conscience. I mean, God forbid, why would they do that? It costs money. So, you know, it's all about politics and money. Just trace it, right?
All right, so next question is from Ray J. Is the Vatican facing last day scenario or trying to delay the myth?
Not sure what that means. Which last day? You mean, yeah, that'd have to be more specific. There are a lot of last day scenarios. So I'm not sure what is meant specifically.
Yeah, Ray J, if you could expand on that, please. Freya wants to know, is Pope Leo also like Pope John Paul?
The first or second. I mean, they're all, you don't get under the seat of Peter there unless you unless you're in the ninth circle. And, you know, we said in the previous show, there's a picture of Robert Prevost, the present Pope Leo, as a young guy, shaking hands with John Paul II. And during that same month, they both were involved in that ninth circle ritual slaughter of a young Italian boy, at which two of the witnesses were present, an insider and a young girl who was part of that ritual.
How are you protecting your health and well-being, knowing all of this stuff? That's from Simon.
I've stopped worrying about that. I just keep going. It keeps you alive. To do this kind of work, you lose your own self-concern. And I had to do that many years ago. If you know, when you're really targeted, if you start worrying about yourself, it'll destroy you. And it's meant to. You're meant to self-destruct, you know. But if you ignore that and stop worrying about yourself and focus on what needs to be done, that keeps me going. And, you know, we live in a narcissistic age, and people find that hard to believe, right? You know, you need a lot of self-care and all that. No, you don't really. You know, you just have to do what's necessary. And that's part of the reason I've kept going.
So does the Israeli Mossad work with the Catholic Church? I was just given a book on the Mossad today. I'm just going to grab it while Kevin gives an answer on this. I'll be right back.
Again, I don't know specifics, but there is lots of evidence tying, interestingly, when the Vatican rat lines after World War II, we were smuggling a lot of Nazis into Canada and South America. Mossad was involved in that. Mossad has been helping, you know, fascist dictatorships all over the world, and with Vatican money. You know, so I mean, the two have intercrossed a lot, you know. But I'm sure, again, Sean can give you more details.
Well, I'll be able to give you more details after I've read this. This was given to me today, and I'm told it really gets in depth about the Mossad. Gideon's Spies by Gordon Thomas, and it's 600 plus pages long.
I can tell you.
Plenty
Do you remember there was a letter sent to you by one of my bodyguard, Yosef, and
yes,
he has a really interesting history. He went up against Mossad, and he was from an East European country and was working with certain groups in the Mideast, and Mossad tried to kill him on several occasions. So he's sometimes fills my ear about all he knows about Mossad. So sometime I'll talk more about that one.
Would he be willing to come on and do a live stream with you, or is that not possible?
He wouldn't expose himself publicly, and nor should he. But I can pass on what he tells me.
Yeah, please do.
I've been so engrossed in this, I haven't, but it sounded really interesting what he knew about Mossad.
So you got a question from Woo Woo, and Woo Woo wants to know if there is a guilty ruling in the common court, what are the penalties?
There's no limit, even the death penalty, frankly. Previously, Ratzinger and others and Elizabeth Windsor and others the verdict was life imprisonment without possibility of parole for heinous crimes like this to this degree. But that's up to the 5 magistrates. Don't forget, this is not a jury trial like Ratzinger's was. This is more like a tribunal where the magistrates bring in the verdict, like they did at Nuremberg.
All right, let me see. No, we don't want to do that one. Let me try and just screen these a little bit. Are the popes actually reptilians? You know, you see this theory about having no conscience whatsoever. It's like they're like reptiles. They're just psychopathic. That, you know, they're predatory. Could you compare the popes to reptiles?
No, they're just
David Icke does.
I don't think you have to be a reptile to be inhuman. I mean, because I don't think people are necessarily born with much of a conscience. I experience that every day. I mean, the question to me is never, why are these guys doing these things, right? The question is, why are we all standing back and letting it happen? I mean, nobody will allow, if you know there's a child being harmed somewhere, why would you not intervene, right? So where is our conscience? Where is our humanity? To me, you got to look in the mirror first and say, do I care enough about these children to risk my own life to save them? Because if not, then maybe I'm a reptile. Maybe the limbic part of my brain that's compassion about the things that have kept us human, maybe it isn't there. Maybe it's being drained out of us by all this electronic assault we're under. That to me is the question. Because, you know, we'll put out a call and nobody will show up. You know, 1 or 2 or 3 people watching this might take action. But the point is, we have to start at home and realize they don't matter. Once we get mobilized, we're the sleeping giant. We could overturn all of this tomorrow if we all just got together, stop fighting each other, which is what they want, and unite on the basics. Save Mother Earth, save our children, defend our liberties, right?
You're getting asked, would you describe them more as demonically possessed humans versus interdimensional beings?
Who? I didn't hear the first part.
So the people like the evil people that you're talking about, would you describe them more as demonically possessed humans than interdimensional beings?
I don't know. How do I know? It's like when somebody asks me to talk about God, I say, well, God talk is rumor mongering, because I mean, who knows ultimately, right? So I can't say. I can just go on what I experience and what I know from dealing with people over many years, and that is that, you know, somebody once said, we're all dead souls waiting to be born, right? And I think that's a healthy way to look at it, that our suffering can, as it did with me, ignite something deeper in us and help us acquire a conscience and a courage that's needed to stop these things. You know.
So Chad wants to know if you can cite some sources, evidence for this case.
Oh, lots of sources, lots of evidence. I mean, for one thing, you just have to look at murderbydecree.com, some of the links there. Look at the policy, which we've reprinted, Crimen Solicitanis. Been around since 1929. It says when children are harmed, no one is to tell the police. That's a criminal conspiracy to protect child rapists. That means the Catholic Church should be shut down, because it's, you know, openly defying the child protection laws of every country in the world. And that's an attack. Normally that's considered an act of war under international law, when you're telling your members of your church to break the law of your own country, you know, and help, yeah, and not tell the police, help to keep crimes from the police. Yet they're allowed to do it all over the place. I mean, the point about the evidence is it's right in front of our face. It's in front of our face every day. The problem isn't lack of evidence. The problem is people are dull to it. They've so accepted and normalized the crime that it doesn't seem wrong anymore. That's the big psychological problem. But in terms of the other evidence, stuff will be coming out, including a log kept in the Vatican Library, which has been given to the prosecution, showing the list of all the Ninth Circle rituals going back to at least 1869, and probably a lot sooner than that. There's all the eyewitness testimonies. There's all the documentation, and insiders who have come forward. So again, like I like that George Bernard Shaw quote when he said, tell a man something that confirms his view of the world and you won't have to provide any evidence. But say something that challenges his view of the world and all the evidence in the world won't convince him. And that's true. It's about how we look at our life and the world and whether we feel offended by that and just want to deny it. Show me the proof. Well, why should we have to anymore? Can't you see it? You know?
Well, a lot of us, and you know, we've all been there. We're just blinded by the mainstream media. It takes something to happen in our lives for us to pierce that veil and wake the hell up. And you know, Kevin, let me just add to what Kevin said there. He's got a lot of witness testimony as well. And when it comes to just looking around at our own experiences or the experiences of people that we've come across, you know, we've been researching some stories here lately whereby kids as young as 2, you know, these predators have got their hands on them. And then when people have gone to the authorities don't care. The politicians don't care. You know, there's an epidemic of teenage girls having these things happen to them in this country right now. And the politicians have shown, at least the ones that are in control of government policy, have shown over and over, this is absolutely not a priority of the government to protect our kids. All they care about is their own power bases, making money, rising up the ladder, and you know, all the evil house of card games that they're playing against each other. The public were just cattle. I think Kevin wants to add something to that.
Well, not only don't care, but actively collude. I mean, there's constant. I remember back in 2010 when I was last in England, a young woman came to me and she said, I tried to take my little girl out of kindergarten because they were showing pornographic images to her. They came and arrested me and put me in a psych ward. Okay. that's active collusion. You know, the police, the courts, they're working hand in glove with the system. So that's why we create our own common law courts. I also sent you the statement of Anne-Marie van Blienberg, and she describes seeing Rutte, top judges and everything at these ceremonies. And feel free to share that link. We have her filmed talking about her seeing Rutte and the others at these ceremonies. So, I mean, we're drowning in evidence, frankly, right? The question is, what are people going to do with the evidence? What are you going to do with the knowledge you've been given, right? That's the question, right?
Yeah, there was a case here that where a teenage girl was getting gang R-worded by people, and the dad of the girl tried to intervene, and the police ended up arresting the dad while this was going on to the girl. And that's just one example of just so many. The justice system is completely upside down when it comes to protecting kids, and that's because it's not a priority of the people in power. And like Kevin said, quite often they're complicit in it. So John is saying, Kevin, are you going to also come to Canada?
Canada? Oh, well, yeah, I operate in North America. I'm across the border all the time, US and Canada, doing work on both sides. And please write to me, and we can arrange to link up with whatever group you're nearest, the groups we work with.
All right, next question is from Helena. What does Kevin know about KELA, Intel? I've never heard of it.
Neither have I. Sorry, you'll have to say what that is.
Yeah, you're going to have to expand on that one, please. Is Kevin aware if John Paul Getty's family child transportation tunnels under the Getty Museum?
I don't know. I have no information about that.
It wouldn't surprise me. There's tunnels all over the place. You know, there's a channel we collaborate with that goes in tunnels. I'm going to have to get those guys back on to do some more work on that. So, Irina, in what way is it in the interest of the Spanish authorities to damage the Catholic Church?
They didn't. Oh, you're referring to the when they forced Ratzinger out? It was, like I say, they're not against the Catholic Church. They were against the faction around Ratzinger. They helped Bergoglio get in. Eduardo de Berruga, who was the Spanish ambassador to the Vatican, is the one who levered Ratzinger out of power because we had given the Spanish government our evidence. And obviously the Bergoglio faction, who's friends with Berruga, thought, okay, great, we can use this to get rid of him and put our guys in. So again, this whole politics and money, right?
Yeah. All right. So next question is from Linda. Is Kevin aware of the Castle of Darkness?
Well, I'm aware of a number of castles of darkness. There's a place in Belgium that Tosneo has referred to, I think by that name, but no, she'd have to be more specific.
So Katz wants to know. Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, do you have that statement by Anne-Marie von Bienberg that I sent you?
Yeah, we've got that in an email, yes.
Could you, I'm trying to find mine and I can't see it at the moment, but.
Well, do you want me to read some? Do you want me to read some of it?
Could you, like, especially when she's naming Mark Rutte? I think it's halfway down or something.
Yeah. All right. So, you want me to go halfway down, or you want me to start at the top?
Yeah, start at the top. I just think it's instructive for people when you hear some of the evidence. Right?
All right. So, my name is Anne-Marie. I have been married for 24 years to Keys. Together with his three brothers, Keys forms a criminal organization known as the Octopus Syndicate. They have worked from 1960 on to today. By order of Queen Beatrix, they have organized the unaliving, torture, R-wording, and unaliving of kids in a public setting. They organized that through youth detention centers in the Netherlands. The youth detention centers were told by the criminals that they were asking for the Dutch court for children who could work for the Dutch Queen for a certain period. The detention centers were very happy. They thought that the Queen was a very social person, and they gladly volunteered in giving files of certain children to the criminals. When they wanted to verify what the criminals told them, they were given a name and a phone number of a high-ranking officer in the court of the Queen, and that high-ranking officer would tell them that indeed the criminals were seeking kids to work for a certain period at the Dutch court. After receiving files of approximately 3 kids every time the criminals selected a kid that had no relative or family, they told a youth detention center that those are the ones we want. The youth detention center would give clothes to the child and put the child on the train. From the station, the criminals fetched the child and brought the child to a building that was equipped like a hotel, but was not working as a hotel, although there were people in the lobby as if the hotel was working. Did you want to say something there, Kevin?
No, keep going.
All right. The child was put on a table and given something to drink, and with that drink, the child was drugged. Besides, that hotel was a building where the performance took place. In that building, there were people were sitting down. At a certain moment, the child was brought into the building by the criminals, tortured, R-worded, and brutally unalived in front of those people. The audience was around Prince Johann Friso, the second son of Queen Beatrix. I was told that Johann was quite insane and had an unhealthy interest in young children and had a psychiatrist with him every day of his life. Sounds like the Marquis de Sade. That psychiatrist's name was Gus Dumont. The criminals organized those killings in accordance with the Queen, who paid for the killings, and the criminals asked Johann to bring his relatives and friends with him. So the whole building was filled with important people from the Netherlands, ministers, high-ranking officers, and all kinds of people that the criminals could photograph so they could blackmail those people and get criminal advantages from it. Do you want me to read the next paragraph?
Yeah, I will. So I asked her, could you name some of the people who were present? She said, the people who I recognized that were there were Prince Johann Friso, his psychiatrist Gus Dumont. I recognized Johann's wife, Mabel Smith. She was there with an old man, I think it was George Soros. I recognized a Herr Donner, a former minister of the law department, the viceroy of the Netherlands. I recognized Ernst Hirsch Ballen, a very important former minister of justice. Mr. Van der Emster, who was for years the head of all judges in the Netherlands. I recognized Dick Berlin, a former head of the military in the Netherlands, and an important journalist. I recognized Carl Eradus, the wife of Friso's psychiatrist. Carl is the president of a court in Amsterdam. And I recognize Mark Rutte. He's at this moment the president of the Netherlands. I recognize Geert Wilders, who at the moment is head of the political party PVV and head of the Dutch parliament. There were about 50 people every time I was taken there. I was taken there 3 times and so on. And then she talked about the murder of children. So this is the degree of detail we have from Anne-Marie and others. She herself was a lawyer who was entrapped by coming in. Her husband she didn't know he was a member of the mafia, the 'Ndrangheta. He trapped her, and then after that, she was forced to attend and do other things. And like Toast, she's in exile and hiding after that, right?
So you've got a lovely comment that's come in for you, Kevin. Not a question, just massive gratitude for your dedication and lifetime of work on this. Thank you for being honest about what you don't know and for being unafraid to name the names.
Well, go and do likewise.
So, Kevin, we're at the hour and we've got through all of the pertinent questions. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers?
Just that in the coming week, it's going to get really interesting because the summonses are going to go out and 99% chance they're going to be ignored. At that point, the judges have to decide whether they're going to issue arrest warrants. And then this time they have police and others willing to help enforce that. So you'll probably see in the coming week or two, a number of these people who are going to be named as defendants hiding, getting off the radar, disappearing for long periods, because they're not stupid. They know that any cop, any citizen can use this universal arrest warrant to go into any church, seize any evidence, arrest any person. This is an opportunity for people to actually do something, have the power to do it legally. And that's what we say to people all the time. So stand by. I'll keep you all updated. And write to me if you want to be on our mailing list, and you'll get all the updates and everything.
And we appreciate you coming on here and giving us the first update, Kevin. And if anything else breaks, just let us know and we will get you right on. And all of Kevin's links are in the description box, the books, etc. So please support his work. I'll let you go, my friend, and I will close the show. So have a great rest of your day and take care.
Thank you, Sean, and especially people in America, that whole Lake Erie connection, really important we're working on. So please contact us about that. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. All right. Good night. Cheers.
Good night.
Another phenomenal interview by Kevin. Again, don't forget, please support his work. All the links are in the description box. You can watch previous episodes. You can get the books. There's just so much in his scope of work. It's phenomenal. And if you missed the interview about the unaliving of Princess Diana, when I finish this video, it's going to take you to it. And we also had Rymir on earlier today, Jay-Z's son, part 4. So if you missed that one, look out for that one as well. He's an absolute great guy, exposing